Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Evan Blackwood, 32 years old, and I've always been the type to run from my problems rather than face them. After my divorce from Sarah and the loss of my job at the architecture firm in Philadelphia, I decided that civilization had nothing left to offer me. With my savings, I purchased a small, dilapidated cabin deep in the forest near Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. The locals warned me about the area's history, whispered tales of the restless spirits of coal miners who died in the Panther Creek Valley disaster, and murmurs about something called the Carbon County Wraith that supposedly haunted these woods. But I dismissed their concerns as small-town superstition. The cabin needed extensive work, but that was exactly what I wanted, a project to lose myself in, away from the noise and disappointment of modern life. My only neighbors were the Hardings, an older couple who lived about 2 miles down the dirt road. Martha and Bill had been off-grid for nearly 20 years, generating their own power and growing most of their food. They seemed pleased to have someone new in the area, though Martha's eyes held a peculiar worry whenever she looked toward the dense forest behind my property. The first month passed uneventfully as I restored the cabin's roof and reinforced its failing foundation. I brought enough supplies to last through winter and set up solar panels for modest electricity needs. Cell service was non-existent, but I had a satellite phone for emergencies. I kept a detailed journal of my progress, sketching plans for expansion come spring, a greenhouse, maybe a chicken coop. The isolated rhythm of my days brought a peace I hadn't felt in years. Each evening, I'd sit on my porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, feeling the weight of my former life slipping away. Sometimes I'd hike through the surrounding woods, mapping the terrain and familiarizing myself with the land. During one such excursion, I discovered an old mineshaft entrance partially collapsed and overgrown with vegetation. Something about it made my skin crawl, perhaps the unnatural darkness beyond the timbers or the strange silence surrounding it. No birds sang near that opening. I marked it on my hand-drawn map simply as a void and made a mental note to ask the Hardings about it later. As October arrived, the forest transformed into a blaze of red and gold. I'd settled into a comfortable routine, chopping wood in the mornings, working on cabin improvements during daylight hours, and reading by firelight in the evenings. I'd almost forgotten why I'd come here in the first place. Almost. On particularly quiet nights, Sarah's accusations would replay in my mind, reminding me of my failures. I'd shake them off, reminding myself that this solitude, was my redemption. The night of October 11th marked the first strange occurrence. I was awakened by what sounded like someone calling my name from the edge of the forest. The voice was faint but distinct, somehow familiar yet impossible to place. I convinced myself it was just the wind playing tricks through the trees, but that didn't explain how it knew my name. I checked the locks twice before returning to bed, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Bill Harding stopped by the next day with a gift of fresh venison and homemade preserves. As we shared coffee on my porch, I casually mentioned being woken by strange sounds. Bill's weathered face grew serious. "The forest gets restless this time of year," he said carefully. "The old-timers call it the thinning time, when the boundary between our world and what lies beyond grows weak. Best to stay inside after dark for the next few weeks." I laughed it off, but Bill didn't join me. Before leaving, he pressed something into my hand, a small leather pouch filled with herbs that gave off a pungent aroma. "Keep this by your door," he instructed. "Might seem foolish, but we've survived 20 winters here by respecting local wisdom." That evening, I hung Bill's charm by my door, feeling slightly foolish but unwilling to dismiss his concern entirely. As darkness fell, I built up the fire and tried to lose myself in a dog-eared paperback, but I couldn't focus on the words. Something felt different about the night. The darkness outside my windows seemed deeper, more attentive. And though the night was still, I could have sworn I heard footsteps circling my cabin, pausing occasionally as if listening. When I finally gathered the courage to peek through the curtains, I saw nothing but the dim shapes of trees swaying gently in the moonlight. Yet the disturbing sensation of being watched remained until dawn broke through the trees. The coming days brought a shift in the woods around my cabin. The vibrant autumn colors seemed to dull overnight, and an unnatural silence descended upon the forest. Birds no longer sang in the morning, and the usual rustling of small animals in the underbrush had ceased entirely. I tried to convince myself it was just the changing season, but something primal within me recognized the warning signs. Nature itself was retreating from something. My sleep became increasingly disturbed by vivid nightmares. Dreams of being pursued through endless mind tunnels by something I couldn't see but could feel breathing down my neck. I'd wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, the cabin seeming smaller and more vulnerable each time. The rational part of my brain insisted it was just isolation playing tricks on my mind, but doubt was creeping in like the persistent damp that had begun to permeate my walls despite the fire I kept burning. I decided to hike to the Hardings' place for some human connection, hoping conversation might dispel the growing unease. The journey that should have taken 40 minutes stretched to nearly 2 hours as I repeatedly found myself disoriented, paths I'd walked dozens of times suddenly unfamiliar. When I finally arrived, the Hardings' homestead seemed changed, the once welcoming garden now overgrown, windows dark despite the early hour. I knocked repeatedly, but no one answered. Peering through a window, I could see evidence of hasty departure. Cabinet doors left open, food still on the table. A note tacked to their door simply read, "Gone to our daughters until November. Stay away from the old shaft." The walk back to my cabin felt even longer, the forest watching my every move. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had driven the Hardings away, something they hadn't warned me about directly. By the time I reached my clearing, dusk was falling, and with it came that same eerie silence from before. But now I noticed something new, a faint smell of sulfur and cold dust hanging in the air, though I hadn't lit the wood stove that day. That night, I awoke to the sound of tapping on my bedroom window, a deliberate, rhythmic pattern like the coded communications miners once used underground. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. My blood turned to ice as I lay frozen in bed, watching the glass fog from the outside as if someone, or something, was breathing against it. When I finally summoned the courage to look, I caught only a glimpse of what seemed like a blackened hand sliding away from the glass, leaving sooty streaks behind. I spent the remainder of the night huddled in the corner of my living room, shotgun across my lap, listening to the sounds of movement around my cabin, scraping against the walls, footsteps on the porch that were too heavy to belong to any woodland creature. With first light, I examined the exterior of my home and found black handprints smeared across every window and door. The marks definitely human in shape, but unnaturally elongated, as if made by fingers stretched beyond normal proportions. Despite every instinct screaming at me to leave, I stayed. Where would I go? Back to Philadelphia, admitting defeat? No, I had committed to this new life, and I wouldn't be chased away by what? Ghosts? Hallucinations? Local pranksters? I spent the day reinforcing my doors and windows, trying to convince myself there was a rational explanation. Yet as I worked, I couldn't ignore the new tracks in the soil around my cabin, deep impressions that led from the direction of the old mine shaft and circled my home before returning toward that forbidden place. The following evening brought the first snow of the season, a light dusting that transformed the forest into a ghostly landscape. I sat by my window, watching the flakes drift down and trying to ignore the growing sense of wrongness that pervaded my sanctuary. The cabin felt different somehow, as if the space within had expanded while I wasn't looking, corners stretching away into impossible shadows. More than once, I caught movement in my peripheral vision, only to find nothing when I turned to look. Around midnight, the power from my solar setup failed completely, plunging me into darkness save for the dying fire. As I fumbled for a flashlight, a sound froze me in place, the unmistakable creak of a floorboard from the bedroom, followed by the soft shuffle of footsteps. Someone, or something, was inside my cabin. Heart hammering, I grabbed my hunting knife and edged toward the sound, flashlight beam creating more shadows than it dispelled. The bedroom was empty, but the air hung heavy with the acrid smell of cold dust and something else, a rotting, earthy scent like freshly disturbed grave soil. My bedsheets were disturbed, and there, in the center of the mattress, lay a single blackened miner's helmet, its lamp cracked and filled with what looked disturbingly like congealed blood. A message was scratched into the metal, You're on borrowed ground. My hands trembling, I backed out of the room, only to hear a wet, rasping sound coming from my bathroom. The door stood slightly ajar, darkness pulsing beyond it. As I approached, flashlight extended like a talisman before me. A voice whispered from behind the door, hoarse, pained, and unmistakably inhuman. "We've been waiting for you, architect. We need someone with your skills down below." I fled then, bursting through my front door into the snowy night, caring only about putting distance between myself and whatever had invaded my home. The forest was alive with shadows, dark figures flitting between trees just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I ran blindly, slipping on the fresh snow, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. After what felt like hours, I collapsed against a tree, lungs burning from the frigid air. It was then that I realized my terrible mistake. In my panic, I had run deeper into the forest rather than toward the road. The snow was falling heavier now, obscuring my tracks, and the trees all looked identical in the darkness. But as I tried to get my bearings, I spotted a dull orange glow through the trees ahead. Perhaps a campfire? Another cabin? Hope surged within me as I moved cautiously toward it. The glow led me to a clearing I'd never seen before, at the center of which gaped the entrance to a mine shaft, the same one I discovered months earlier, yet somehow different. Larger, more deliberate in its construction. The orange light pulsed from deep within it, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for me like grasping hands. And there, arranged in a semicircle around the entrance, stood 7 figures, unnaturally tall and thin, their bodies blackened as if charred, faces obscured by antique mining masks with cracked glass visors that reflected the firelight. They didn't move as I approached, frozen like grotesque statues, but I could feel their awareness, their attention fixed solely on me. When I tried to retreat, my legs wouldn't respond. Some force held me in place, drawing me inch by unwilling inch toward the mine entrance. As I drew closer, I could see that the figures weren't wearing mining gear at all. The blackened coverings were their skin, cracked and flaking to reveal glimpses of raw red flesh beneath. Their fingers elongated into claw-like appendages that dripped a thick, tar-like substance onto the snow. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I broke free from whatever force held me and ran once more into the forest. Behind me, a chorus of inhuman shrieks erupted, not sounds of anger, but of anticipation of hunters enjoying the chase. I crashed through underbrush, no longer caring about direction, knowing only that I needed to put as much distance as possible between myself and those things. But no matter how far or fast I ran, the orange glow seemed to remain visible through the trees, as if the mine entrance was somehow following me through the forest. Dawn found me huddled in the hollow of an ancient oak, shivering uncontrollably, my clothes soaked and frozen. The snowfall had stopped, leaving the forest transformed into an alien landscape of white. In daylight, my fear seemed almost foolish, a grown man terrified by shadows and local legends. Perhaps I'd experienced some kind of breakdown, my isolated mind manufacturing horrors from old mining tragedies I'd read about. Yet the blackened palm prints on my hands, left there when one of those things had almost grabbed me during my flight, argued otherwise. I needed to get back to my cabin, gather essential supplies, and leave this place for good. Using the rising sun to orient myself, I began the long trek back, each step a battle against exhaustion and lingering terror. The forest seemed different in daylight. Paths had shifted, landmarks I recognized were now in impossible locations. Twice I found myself circling back to the same lightning-struck tree, though I'd been walking in what I was certain was a straight line. By mid-afternoon, I finally glimpsed my cabin through the trees, but something was wrong. Smoke billowed from the chimney, though I knew the fire had been nearly out when I fled. As I crept closer, I saw fresh footprints in the snow around the property. Not the elongated marks from before, but normal human prints. Relief washed over me. Perhaps the Hardings had returned, or maybe some hiker had sought shelter from the storm. I approached my own front door like a stranger, knocking hesitantly. The door swung open to reveal Sarah, my ex-wife, standing in my living room as if she belonged there. "Evan," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. "Where have you been? You look terrible." I stood frozen on the threshold, unable to process her presence. Sarah lived in Boston now, hundreds of miles away. How had she found me? Why would she come? She ushered me inside, plucking over my condition, helping me out of my wet clothes and into fresh ones as if our divorce had never happened. The cabin looked different, cleaner, more organized, with a few touches that were distinctly Sarah's style. How long have you been here? I asked, accepting the hot tea she pressed into my trembling hands. I arrived yesterday, she said. I've been worried about you. Your emails have been disturbing lately. Emails? I hadn't sent any emails since moving here. There was no internet connection. Before I could question her further, Sarah moved to stir the fire, and I caught sight of something that made my blood freeze. A small black smudge on the back of her neck, just below the hairline, in the distinct shape of a handprint. My eyes darted around the cabin, noticing other details I'd missed. The faint smell of coal dust beneath her perfume, the subtle layer of black grime along the baseboards, the way the shadows in the corners seemed to pulse when she moved past them. You should eat something, Sarah said, ladling stew from a pot that had definitely not been in my kitchen before. The food smelled delicious, but beneath the aroma of herbs and meat lurked that same earthy, grave soil scent from the night before. When she turned to reach for bowls, I noticed her movements were slightly off, too fluid in some places, too stiff in others, as if someone was wearing Sarah like an ill-fitting costume. I made an excuse about needing to use the bathroom and slipped down the hall, mind racing. The bathroom was immaculate, another sign something was wrong, as I'd left it cluttered with toiletries. Leaning close to the mirror, I examined my reflection, half expecting to see some sign of transformation. Instead, I saw only my haggard face, eyes wild with fear and exhaustion. But then I noticed something in the reflection. The shower curtain behind me was slightly open, revealing not my shower stall, but the yawning blackness of what appeared to be a mine tunnel, a set of tracks disappearing into the darkness. Choking back a scream, I spun around, but there was only my normal shower, the curtain fully closed. Heart pounding, I eased it open to reveal ordinary white tile. I was losing my mind. I had to get out of here, away from this cabin, away from whatever was pretending to be Sarah. My truck keys hung on a hook by the back door. If I could reach them without alerting Sarah, I might have a chance. I returned to the kitchen, forcing a calm I didn't feel. Not Sarah was setting the table, her movements becoming increasingly jerky, her smile fixed and unnatural. You know what? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think I left some of my gear outside. I should bring it in before it gets dark. Her head turned toward me with an audible cracking sound, neck bending at an impossible angle. It's already inside, Evan, she said, her voice suddenly deeper, resonating from somewhere other than her throat. Everything you need is down below. We made sure of that. I bolted for the back door, grabbing my keys as I passed. Behind me, Sarah's voice distorted into something inhuman, a chorus of voices calling my name with increasing urgency. I threw myself into my truck, fumbling the key into the ignition with shaking hands. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the vehicle into reverse just as Sarah burst through the door. Except it wasn't Sarah anymore. The thing on my porch wore shreds of her face like a torn mask, the skin beneath black and glistening, eyes now empty sockets weeping a thick, dark substance. I floored the accelerator, tires spinning in the snow before finding purchase. The truck shot backward down my long driveway as more figures emerged from the surrounding woods, the same tall, blackened shapes from the mine entrance, moving with unnatural speed through the trees parallel to my escape route. I reached the main road and spun the wheel, pointing the truck toward town. In my rearview mirror, I saw the creatures gather at the edge of my property, watching me flee. They weren't pursuing. Instead, they were laughing, the sound carrying clearly despite the distance. They were letting me go. I drove straight to the Jim Thorpe police station, bursting through the doors with my wild tale of home invasion and pursuit. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Kolchak, listened patiently, his expression shifting from concern to skepticism as my story unraveled into talk of mine spirits and doppelgangers. When I finished, he sighed heavily. Mr. Blackwood, we've had reports about trespassers up near your property. Probably just local kids pulling Halloween pranks. As for your ex-wife, are you certain she was there? We can send a car to check. I insisted on accompanying the officers back to my cabin, my panic rising as we approached my property. But the scene that greeted us was maddeningly normal. My cabin stood peaceful in the afternoon light. No smoke from the chimney, no signs of disturbance. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it the night before. Dishes in the sink, books scattered on the coffee table, fire reduced to cold ashes. No trace of Sarah or the horrific transformation I'd witnessed. Even the shower curtain revealed nothing but my ordinary bathroom tiles. The officers exchanged knowing glances as I frantically searched for evidence. The miner's helmet, the black handprints, anything to prove I hadn't imagined it all. But there was nothing. "Look," the younger officer said kindly. "The first winter alone up here can be rough. Isolation plays tricks on the mind. Maybe you should come into town for a few days. Clear your head." His partner was less sympathetic, muttering something about city folks and wasting police time as they prepared to leave. Humiliated but still terrified, I agreed to follow them into town, hastily packing an overnight bag. As the officers waited in their cruiser, I made a final sweep of the cabin. In my bedroom, I noticed something I'd missed before. My journal lay open on the nightstand, though I distinctly remembered leaving it in a drawer. Flipping through the pages, my blood ran cold. The familiar entries chronicling my cabin renovations gave way to pages of frantic, unfamiliar handwriting. Endless repetitions of the phrase, "come down below," interspersed with crude drawings of mining tunnels and elongated, inhuman figures. I thrust the journal into my bag and hurried outside, unwilling to spend another moment in the cabin. As I locked the door, I glanced back one last time and froze. There in the bedroom window stood Sarah, watching me leave, her face serene but eyes completely black, one hand pressed against the glass leaving a perfect sooty print. I blinked and she was gone. The officers dropped me at the inn at Jim Thorpe, the oldest hotel in town. The desk clerk seemed unsurprised by my disheveled appearance, commenting that they got a lot of folks from up near Bear Creek this time of year, looking for a break from the solitude. I took a room on the third floor, double-locking the door and pushing a chair under the handle before collapsing onto the bed, exhaustion finally overcoming fear. I slept deeply for the first time in days, awakening around midnight to the sound of tapping at my window. Impossible, given that my room was 3 stories up. Yet there it was again, the same rhythmic pattern I'd heard at the cabin. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Heart racing. I approached the window and yanked open the curtains. Nothing but darkness and the distant lights of the town below. I was about to turn away when movement caught my eye. A dark figure scaling the brick wall outside, moving with spider-like agility, leaving glistening black smears in its wake. Panic propelled me out of the room and down to the hotel lobby, where the night manager looked up from his crossword puzzle with mild concern. "Everything all right, sir?" he asked. I stammered something about needing fresh air, escaping through the front doors onto the empty street. The town was silent, most businesses closed for the night. I walked aimlessly, trying to calm my racing thoughts, eventually finding myself in front of the local historical society, a converted Victorian mansion that now housed artifacts from the region's coal mining past. A light glowed from inside, though it was well past midnight. Drawn by some compulsion I couldn't name, I approached the windows and peered inside. The interior was set up as a museum, with glass cases displaying mining equipment, photographs, and documents. But what caught my eye was a large map on the far wall, illuminated by a single lamp. Even from outside, I could see it was a detailed rendering of the mining tunnels that honeycombed the mountains around Jim Thorpe. And there, marked in red, was a section directly beneath my cabin's location. A figure moved into view inside the building, an elderly man in a tweed jacket examining the map with intense concentration. Without thinking, I knocked on the window. He turned, unsurprised, and motioned for me to come to the front door. "Been expecting you," he said as he let me in, his voice gravelly with age. "Name's Merrill. I'm the caretaker here. You're the fella who bought the old Kester place up on Bear Creek, aren't you?" Inside, Merrill listened to my story without interruption, nodding occasionally, as if confirming things he already knew. When I finished, he led me to the map I'd seen through the window. The Panther Creek disaster wasn't the only tragedy in these mountains, he explained, tracing a gnarled finger along tunnel paths. In 1897, a mining company called Carbon County Coal discovered an unusually deep vein running right through this area. His finger stopped at the red-marked section beneath my property. They dug a special shaft, deeper than any other in the region. Local legend says they dug too deep, broke through into something they shouldn't have. According to Merrill, the miners began reporting strange occurrences, tools disappearing, mysterious figures glimpsed in the darkness, an oppressive presence that seemed to watch them from the shadows. Then men started vanishing, one by one. When they were found, those that were found at all, their bodies were blackened and twisted, as if they'd been burned from the inside out. The company hushed it up, sealing the shaft and denying anything had happened. They built the cabin, my cabin, as housing for security personnel tasked with keeping people away from the sealed entrance. Every few decades, someone new comes to that cabin, Merrill said, his eyes grave. They never stay long. The things from below, whatever got into those miners, they need fresh bodies every so often. Fresh minds, too. They're building something down there, preparing for something. They need architects, engineers, people like you. As he spoke, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. A familiar black smudge on Merrill's collar, partially hidden by his jacket. The same handprint I'd seen on Sarah. Understanding dawned with horrific clarity. There was no escape. They had been hurting me, manipulating my fears, driving me exactly where they wanted me to go. Even now, the windows of the historical society were darkening, black smears spreading across the glass like living tar. "Don't worry," Merrill said, his voice changing, deepening into that same resonant chorus I'd heard from Not Sarah. "The transition is uncomfortable, but brief. And afterward, you'll understand your purpose. The great work beneath must continue." His face began to sag, the skin sloughing away to reveal the blackened flesh beneath. Behind him, the map of mining tunnels rippled and tore, the wall behind it opening into a yawning tunnel mouth that could not exist inside this building. I ran, but the front door wouldn't budge. Other figures were emerging from the museum's shadows now, blackened, elongated forms in the shapes of men, but impossibly wrong in their movements. I fled deeper into the museum, searching desperately for another exit. In a back room, I found a fire escape door and slammed into it, spilling out into an alley. I ran without direction, the streets of Jim Thorpe twisting in impossible ways, every turn somehow leading me uphill, back toward the mountain, back toward my cabin. Exhausted and disoriented, I found myself at the edge of town where the road began its winding ascent toward Bear Creek. And there, parked perfectly at the trailhead, was my truck, which I knew I'd left at the hotel. The keys hung in the ignition, an invitation. Or a trap. In my desperation, I convinced myself I could escape, drive south, put states between myself and this cursed place. I climbed in and started the engine, the familiar rumble momentarily comforting. I drove for hours, the pre-dawn darkness giving way to misty morning light. Signs for Allentown, then Philadelphia flashed past. I began to believe I'd escaped, that the horror was behind me. At a gas station outside Lancaster, I finally dared to check my phone, which had been dead for days, and found it miraculously charged. There were dozens of missed calls from Sarah, my real Sarah, and a text message sent just minutes ago. "Where are you? I'm worried sick. Please come home." Hope swelled within me. Perhaps it had all been a breakdown, a psychotic episode triggered by isolation and regret. I called Sarah immediately, nearly weeping with relief when she answered. "Evan, oh my God, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days." I apologized profusely, explaining that I was coming home, that I'd made a terrible mistake thinking I could live alone in the woods. She sounded genuinely concerned, the warmth in her voice so different from the hollow impersonation at the cabin. We arranged to meet at our old favorite restaurant in Philadelphia, a small Italian place where we'd had our first date. I checked into a hotel to shower and change, scrubbing frantically at the lingering black smudges on my skin. In the mirror, I looked haggard but human. No sign of the transformation I'd feared was overtaking me. By evening, sitting across from Sarah in the warm, crowded restaurant, the horrors of Jim Thorpe seemed distant and dreamlike. "I've missed you," Sarah said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Her touch was warm, familiar. "I never should have let you leave." We talked for hours, reconnecting, rebuilding. She didn't press me about what had happened in the mountains, and I was grateful. Some things were better left unspoken. As we left the restaurant, she suggested we go back to her place. "Just to talk," she said. "I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't think you should be either." It was only as we entered her apartment that the first whisper of wrongness crept in. The layout was exactly as I remembered from our marriage, but we had lived in Boston, not Philadelphia. The photos on the walls showed places we'd never visited, moments we'd never shared. When I turned to question Sarah, the words died in my throat. Her smile was stretched too wide, her eyes now solid black, reflecting nothing. "Welcome home, architect," she said, her voice once again that horrible chorus. "You've completed the circuit. The old ways require that you come willingly, that you choose your fate." The walls of the apartment began to dissolve, revealing rough-hewn rock behind the plaster. The floor sagged, wooden boards giving way to dirt and gravel. All around us, the familiar trappings of domestic life transformed into the entrance of a mine shaft, the same one I'd been running from all along. In that moment of horrific clarity, I understood there had been no escape. Every road had led back here, every choice carefully manipulated. Perhaps I had never left Jim Thorpe at all. The blackened figures emerged from the shadows, their elongated limbs reaching for me. As they pulled me toward the depths, I caught one last glimpse of false Sarah, her skin now entirely shed to reveal the thing beneath. Ancient, patient, and hungry for whatever lay beneath the mountains of Pennsylvania. And as the darkness swallowed me, I realized my true mistake, not in coming to this place, but in believing I had ever had a choice at all. My name is Lena Mercer, 34 years old, and I've always been drawn to forgotten places. After burning out from my high-pressure job as a wildlife photographer in Manhattan, I decided to pursue a long-held dream, restoring an abandoned farmhouse in the remote Pocono Mountains near Centralia, Pennsylvania. Despite warnings about the area's unstable ground due to the underground mine fire that's been burning since 1962, I was captivated by the haunting beauty of this semi-ghost town. The property was dirt cheap, and the isolation promised the peace I desperately needed to recover from what my therapist had diplomatically called extreme professional exhaustion. The farmhouse sat on 5 acres of overgrown land about 3 miles from the nearest neighbor, an eccentric older woman named Virginia Kowalski, who'd refused to evacuate when most residents fled decades ago. When I met her during my property inspection, she studied me with unsettling intensity before nodding once, as if confirming something to herself. "You'll do," she said cryptically, pressing a small iron key into my palm. "This doesn't belong to your house, but you'll need it all the same. The Hollow folk don't take kindly to uninvited guests." Before I could question her about this strange gift, she'd shuffled back to her truck and driven away. The first month of renovation went smoothly enough. I cleared decades of debris, replaced rotting floorboards, and patched the worst of the roof leaks. The work was exhausting but satisfying, giving my hands something to do while my mind slowly uncoiled from years of stress. I'd wake with the dawn, work until dusk, then sit on my porch watching the fireflies rise from the tall grass like earthbound stars. Sometimes I'd notice wisps of smoke rising from cracks in the ground in the distance, subtle reminders of the inferno raging beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful landscape. I'd brought my camera equipment, of course, unable to completely shed the habits of my former life. In the early evenings, I'd venture into the surrounding woods to photograph the unique ecosystem that had evolved in this semi-abandoned region. Nature was reclaiming the land in fascinating ways, buildings half swallowed by aggressive vines, roads buckled and split by persistent tree roots, steam vents creating microclimates where unusual fungal colonies thrived. I was particularly fascinated by a clearing about a mile from my property where the ground remained perpetually warm, even on cooler days, and strange red mushrooms grew in perfect circles. During one such photography excursion, I discovered an old trail leading deeper into the forest than I'd previously explored. The path was barely visible, but something about its winding course through the trees seemed deliberate, almost inviting. Following it led me to a small, nearly perfect circular meadow surrounded by unusually twisted oaks. At the center stood a crude stone structure, a short pillar or altar of some kind, its surface covered with weathered carvings that I couldn't quite make out in the fading light. I snapped several photos, planning to return the next day for better shots. That night brought the first hint that something was amiss in my rural sanctuary. I was awakened around 3 a.m. by what sounded like singing, distant voices chanting in harmony, the melody both beautiful and somehow wrong, like music played in a minor key by an out-of-tune instrument. I peered out my windows but saw nothing in the moonlit yard. The singing seemed to be coming from the direction of the circular meadow I'd discovered earlier. Curious and only slightly unnerved, I decided to investigate in the morning rather than wandering the woods at night. Reviewing my photos over breakfast the next day, I noticed something odd. In every shot of the stone altar, there appeared to be a dark, humanoid figure standing just at the edge of the frame, partially obscured by trees. Yet I was certain I'd been alone during my hike. More disturbing was the way the figure seemed to be in a slightly different position in each sequential shot, as if it had been slowly circling me as I photographed the clearing. The rational part of my brain suggested a trick of light and shadow, but a growing sense of unease suggested otherwise. Virginia appeared on my doorstep later that afternoon, a basket of homegrown vegetables in her gnarled hands. Her eyes narrowed when she noticed my camera on the table, photos of the stone altar clearly visible on the display screen. "You found the singing circle," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. When I asked about the strange structure, she sighed heavily, setting down her basket. "That place belongs to the Hollow folk. Been there long before the mines, before the fire, before any of us. Some say they came from Europe with the first miners, old gods hungry for new worship. Others say they've always been here, sleeping in the deep places until the mines opened paths to the surface." She fixed me with a penetrating stare. Either way, best to leave their offerings where they lie. Before leaving, Virginia extracted a promise that I would stay away from the circle during the darkening of the moon, still 3 nights away. I agreed easily, more to ease the old woman's obvious anxiety than from any real concern. As she departed, she hesitated on my porch steps, turning back with a troubled expression. "The key I gave you," she said quietly. "It opens a lock in your root cellar, an old iron door that should remain closed. But if you start hearing whispers from the walls or smell burning where there's no fire, you use that key and you run. The door leads to old mine tunnels. The Hollow folk don't go there. Something about the iron keeps them back." With that cryptic warning, she hurried to her truck, leaving me standing bewildered in my doorway as dust from her departure settled on the evening air. That night, I dreamed of the circular meadow. In my dream, the stone altar glowed with an internal red light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Figures moved around it in a slow, shuffling dance, tall, impossibly thin silhouettes with elongated limbs and heads that seemed slightly too large for their bodies. Though I couldn't make out their features in the dream darkness, I somehow knew they were ancient beyond reckoning, patient as the stone they danced around. I woke gasping, my bedroom filled with the acrid smell of smoke, though no fire burned in my wood stove. Unable to fall back asleep, I spent the pre-dawn hours researching Centralia's history. Beyond the well-documented mine fire, there were older, stranger stories, tales of miners who'd broken through into natural caverns deep beneath the mountains and returned changed, speaking of entities that lived in the darkness. Most sources dismissed these as coal country folklore or the ravings of men suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. But a few obscure local history blogs mentioned a cult that had once operated in the region, worshipping what they called the Hollow Ones, being said to dwell in the spaces between the coal seams, existing partially in our world and partially in some other realm. My research was interrupted by a sharp cracking sound from outside. Dawn had broken while I read, and when I peered through my kitchen window, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The ground in my backyard had split open overnight, a fissure about 6 inches wide running from the edge of the woods directly toward my house. Thin tendrils of smoke rose from the crack, carrying that same acrid smell that had filled my bedroom. When I ventured outside to examine it, the heat radiating from the fissure was unmistakable. The mine fire was spreading beneath my property. I spent the day calling various environmental agencies and local government offices, reporting the fissure. Most officials seemed unsurprised and not particularly concerned. That whole area should have been evacuated decades ago, one bored-sounding clerk informed me. "You're living there at your own risk, ma'am." The best they could offer was to add my property to a list for future assessment, possibly months away. Frustrated, I decided to document the fissure professionally, thinking perhaps dramatic photographs might spur some action. As I set up my tripod, I noticed the crack had widened since morning, now nearly a foot across in some places. Through my camera's telephoto lens, I could see something moving deep within the fissure, a subtle shifting that at first I attributed to rising heat distorting my view. But as I adjusted my focus, the movement resolved into something more deliberate, what looked like pale, elongated fingers gripping the edges of the crack from below, as if something were trying to widen it further. I jerked back from my viewfinder, heart hammering, convinced I was seeing things. When I looked again with my naked eye, there was nothing visible in the depths. The rational explanation was that pieces of shale were breaking off as the ground shifted, but the memory of those finger-like appendages lingered, too specific to dismiss entirely. That evening, Virginia called me, remarkable in itself, as I hadn't given her my number. When I asked how she'd reached me, she ignored the question, her voice tense with urgency. "Don't go outside tonight," she warned. "It's the dark of the moon and the crack in your yard. They'll see it as an invitation." Before I could press for clarification, she continued, "Put iron at your thresholds. Nails, tools, anything made of pure iron. They can't cross it. And whatever you hear, whatever you see, don't open your doors or windows until dawn." The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in bewilderment. Despite my skepticism, Virginia's fear had been genuine enough to set my nerves on edge. I found myself rummaging through my toolbox, placing old iron nails along my windowsills and door frames, feeling slightly foolish but unwilling to dismiss the old woman's warning entirely. As darkness fell, I built a fire in my wood stove, trying to convince myself that the growing sense of watchfulness pressing against my home was just imagination fueled by local legends and isolation. But then the singing began again, closer this time, emanating from the woods at the edge of my property, voices rising and falling in that same haunting, dissonant harmony I'd heard before. Unable to resist, I peered through my living room window. In the dim moonlight, I could make out figures moving at the tree line, tall, unnaturally thin silhouettes advancing with an odd, gliding motion toward my house. They moved in perfect unison, as if choreographed, maintaining equal distance from one another. As they emerged from the shadow of the trees, I could see they were indeed humanoid, but wrong in fundamental ways. Limbs too long and jointed in too many places, fingers that extended like tendrils, heads that seemed to shift shape depending on the angle from which I viewed them. Most disturbing was their lack of definable features. Where faces should have been, they possessed only smooth, blank surfaces occasionally interrupted by vertical slits that opened and closed with their eerie singing. The entities, I couldn't think of them as people, formed a circle around the fissure in my yard, their movements becoming more agitated as the singing intensified. To my horror, I saw the crack widening before my eyes, the ground buckling as if something were pushing up from below. Then came a sound like no other I'd ever heard, a wet, tearing noise followed by what I can only describe as the earth itself groaning in pain. From the widened fissure emerged a much larger figure, similar to the others, but nearly twice their height, its elongated body coated in what appeared to be glistening coal dust. Unlike the others, this entity had a face, if the nightmare assemblage of vertical slits arranged in concentric circles could be called such. The slits pulsed open and closed independently of one another, revealing glimpses of red-orange light from within, like windows into the burning mine below. The tall entity raised what might have been arms toward the night sky, and the singing stopped abruptly, leaving a silence so complete it felt physical, pressing against my ears like deep water. The circle of figures bowed low, foreheads touching the ground in supplication. Only then did I notice what lay at the center of their formation. A deer carcass, freshly killed, its chest cavity splayed open and emptied of organs. As I watched in mounting horror, the tall entity reached down with those two long fingers and lifted something from inside the deer, its heart, still dripping dark blood that steamed when it hit the ground. The entity raised the heart to that terrible circular face, and the vertical slits opened wide, revealing a maw of churning darkness into which it fed the offering. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped my phone as I tried to photograph what was happening, some desperate attempt to prove to myself later that this wasn't hallucination or dream. but each shot came out blurred or completely black, as if the entities existed in a spectrum just outside what my camera could capture. In frustration, I switched to video, hoping movement might register where still images failed. For a brief moment, the recording seemed to work. I could see dark shapes moving around the fissure. Then my phone emitted a high-pitched whine, the screen flashed blinding white, and the device grew so hot I had to drop it. When I recovered it from the floor, the screen was cracked and blackened as if it had been held over an open flame. The ritual in my yard continued for hours, the figures moving in increasingly complex patterns around the fissure as the large entity stood motionless at its edge, face slits constantly opening and closing in mesmerizing rhythms. Occasionally, one of the smaller entities would approach, offering something I couldn't quite make out. Small animals, perhaps, or bundles of plants that gave off strange-colored smoke when placed into the fissure. I remained frozen at my window, unable to look away, a detached part of my mind noting that I should be terrified, should be calling for help or fleeing, yet finding myself instead fascinated by the alien precision of their movements. Near midnight, something changed. The tall entity suddenly went rigid, its circular face turning slowly until all those vertical slits seemed to be staring directly at my window, at me. Though it had no eyes in any conventional sense, I felt seen, examined, evaluated with cold curiosity. One long arm extended, a finger pointing unmistakably toward my house. As one, the circling entities stopped their dance and turned to face me as well. The silence that followed was worse than any sound could have been, a waiting, anticipatory quiet that seemed to draw all other noise from the world. Then they began to move toward my house, their gait changing to something more predatory, more purposeful. They reached my porch steps and stopped, apparently unable to advance further. I remembered Virginia's warning about iron and said a silent prayer of thanks for the nails I'd placed along my thresholds. The entities milled at the boundary for several minutes, occasionally testing it with those elongated fingers, withdrawing quickly as if burned. Then the tall one approached, its massive form looming over my porch railing. It extended one arm, impossibly long, stretching it toward my window. The iron nail I'd placed on the sill seemed to create a barrier it couldn't physically cross, but as I watched in frozen terror, a thin tendril of what looked like black smoke extended from its finger, passing through the glass as if it weren't there. The smoke tendril reached toward me, and when it made contact with my bare arm, my mind exploded with images, vast underground spaces lit by rivers of fire, pale figures moving through lightless tunnels, ancient structures built of some black material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the meager light. I experienced a sense of immense age and patient hunger, of beings that had dwelled beneath the earth long before humans had discovered fire, waiting for the day when our mines and drills would open paths to their domain. Most terrifying was the sense that these entities viewed humans not with hatred, but with something more akin to how we might view livestock. Useful creatures to be cultivated, harvested, and consumed when necessary. The psychic assault lasted only seconds before I managed to stumble back from the window, breaking contact with the smoke tendril. I collapsed to the floor, my head throbbing with visions that seemed burned into my consciousness. From outside came a sound of frustration, a high, keening wail that resonated at a frequency that made my teeth ache and the windows vibrate in their frames. When I finally gathered the courage to peek outside again, the entities were retreating toward the fissure, moving with the same synchronized precision with which they'd arrived. The tall one paused at the edge of the crack, its circular face turning once more toward my house. Though it had no mouth that I could see, I distinctly heard a voice in my mind, ancient, multi-layered, and threaded with amusement. Soon, Watcher, the way widens. The barrier's thin. We have marked you now. I spent the remainder of the night huddled in my bathroom, the only room without windows, a kitchen knife clutched in my trembling hands, though I knew instinctively it would provide no protection against the entities if they returned. As promised, they did not attempt to enter my house again that night. When dawn finally broke, I peered cautiously outside to find my yard empty, the fissure now almost 3 feet wide and extending all the way to my front steps. Where the entities had performed their ritual, the grass had turned a sickly gray-white, as if all life had been leached from it. And there, At the center of their circle lay not the deer carcass I expected, but my own camera, the expensive digital SLR I'd left on the kitchen table the previous evening. Its housing was partially melted, the lens cracked and blackened. When I cautiously examined the memory card, I found a single image, my own face, asleep, photographed from directly above my bed 3 nights earlier. Virginia arrived unannounced before noon, her ancient pickup skidding to a halt in my driveway. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. "They've marked you," she said without preamble. "I can see it on you, like a shadow behind your eyes." She pushed past me into the house, moving with surprising agility for her age, and headed straight for my root cellar door. Time shorter than I thought. The fire's giving them strength, opening paths faster than before. They'll be back tonight, and iron won't hold them a second time once they've gotten your measure. She produced a heavy flashlight from her coat pocket and motioned for me to follow her down the narrow stairs into the damp darkness below my house. The root cellar was small and mostly empty, the earthen floor hard-packed from decades of use. Virginia moved directly to the far wall, brushing aside cobwebs to reveal what I'd assumed was a coal chute, but now saw was a small iron door, its surface covered with strange symbols that might have been letters in some alphabet I'd never encountered. "Your house was built by the Kowalski family, my husband's people," Virginia explained, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "They knew about the Hollow folk, had been keeping them at bay for generations. This door leads to the old mine workings, emergency escape route during the early days of the fire, but it's more than that. The tunnels behind it are lined with iron ore, natural deposit that runs for miles underground. The Hollow folk won't go near it. Something about the metal disrupts whatever passes for their life force." She held out her hand expectantly, and I remembered the iron key she'd given me on our first meeting. I'd attached it to my keyring more out of politeness than any belief I'd need it. As Virginia fitted it to the ancient lock, she continued speaking, her voice low and urgent. "You'll follow these tunnels east, always east, never taking turns that lead north or south. After about 2 miles, you'll reach a chamber with a ladder leading up to an old air shaft. It opens in the woods behind my property. Once you're out, you don't stop, you don't look back. You get in your car, and you drive until this place is nothing but a bad memory." The lock turned with a grinding protest, and the small door swung inward, revealing utter darkness beyond. I began to object, to say I couldn't possibly abandon my home based on what might have been a mass hallucination or elaborate local prank, but the words died in my throat as a low, resonant humming started somewhere in the walls around us. Virginia's eyes widened in alarm. "They're early. Must have felt us disturbing their mark on you." She thrust the flashlight into my hands and practically shoved me toward the iron door. "Go now, girl. I'll buy you what time I can." When I hesitated, unwilling to leave the old woman to face whatever was coming, she fixed me with a stern glare. "I've lived alongside them for 67 years. They know better than to touch me directly. Now go. And remember, always east." Heart pounding, I ducked through the small door into a rough-hewn tunnel that sloped gently downward. The flashlight beam revealed walls reinforced with old timbers, the rock around them streaked with rusty veins of iron, or just as Virginia had described. I heard the iron door clang shut behind me, the key turning in the lock from the other side. Trapped in the earth with only one way to go, I began walking, trying to ignore the occasional distant sounds that might have been falling rocks, or something moving in the darkness beyond my light's reach. The tunnel air was surprisingly fresh, suggesting some connection to the surface that allowed circulation, but tainted with that now familiar acrid smell of the underground fire. The mine workings were a bewildering maze, but I followed Virginia's instructions faithfully, always choosing passages that led eastward. Occasionally I'd come across artifacts of the old mining operation, rusted tools, rotting timber supports, once even an ancient mining cart still sitting on narrow-gauge tracks. After what felt like hours, but was probably less than one, according to my watch, I reached a junction where the main tunnel split into 3 branches. The left and right paths were clearly man-made, with the same dimensional lumber supports I'd been seeing. But the middle path was different, a perfectly circular tunnel that appeared to have been melted rather than dug through the rock, its walls smooth and glassy as if subjected to intense heat. I knew instinctively that this unnatural middle path led toward rather than away from the entities I was fleeing, but something about it pulled at me, a compulsion to explore, to understand what I was running from. I compromised by shining my flashlight down its length without entering. The beam traveled perhaps 30 feet before being swallowed by darkness far deeper than simple absence of light. As I watched, that darkness seemed to shift and coalesce, forming shapes that approached the threshold between their tunnel and mine. I stumbled backward, my rational mind screaming at me to run, even as some deeper, more primitive part whispered to stay, to wait, to witness what emerged. Self-preservation 1. I took the right-hand passage, the one that felt most easterly, and quickened my pace, no longer concerned with mapping my route or examining my surroundings. The tunnel began to slope upward, which I took as a good sign. After another 15 minutes of increasingly difficult climbing, I reached the chamber Virginia had described, a circular room about 20 feet across with a metal ladder bolted to one wall, leading up to what appeared to be a trapdoor in the ceiling. Relief surged through me as I crossed to the ladder, my escape within reach. But as I placed my foot on the bottom rung, a sound from the tunnel behind me froze my blood, that same haunting, multi-voiced singing I'd heard in my yard, growing louder by the second. I scrambled up the ladder, panic lending me speed, and pushed against the trapdoor with all my strength. For one heart-stopping moment it refused to budge, and I feared it had been sealed or blocked from above. Then it gave way with a shower of dirt and dead leaves, and I hauled myself out into the blessed openness of the forest floor. True to Virginia's description, I could see the back of her property through the trees about 100 yards away. I slammed the trapdoor shut and dragged a fallen branch across it, a futile gesture that nonetheless gave me some small comfort. Then I ran, moving faster than I thought possible through the evening dim woods toward the distant safety of Virginia's house. I burst from the tree line into her backyard, gasping for breath, only to stop short at the scene before me. Virginia sat calmly in a rocking chair on her back porch, teacup in hand. Arranged in a perfect semicircle before her were 7 of the tall, thin entities, not the smaller ones I'd seen in my yard, but beings identical to the largest entity that had emerged from the fissure. They stood completely motionless, their circular faces all turned toward Virginia, as if in conversation. As I watched in disbelief, Virginia nodded as if in response to some unheard question, then raised her cup in a gesture that might have been agreement or salute. The entities bowed slightly in unison, then began to sink into the ground, not falling or digging, but passing through the solid earth as if it were no more substantial than fog. Only when the last of them had disappeared did Virginia notice me standing frozen at the edge of her yard. Her expression betrayed no surprise, only resignation and something that might have been pity. "Ah," she said quietly, setting down her teacup. "You made it through. I wasn't entirely sure you would." She gestured to an empty chair beside her, as if inviting me to join her for an ordinary social call, as if I hadn't just witnessed her in communion with the very entities I'd been fleeing. When I remained rooted to the spot, she sighed heavily. "I suppose you'll be wanting explanations then. Best come inside. Night's falling, and while they've agreed to leave you be for now, there are other things in these woods after dark. Things even the hollow folk give wide berth." Virginia's kitchen was exactly what one would expect from an elderly woman living alone in the countryside. Dated appliances, walls covered in faded floral wallpaper, counters cluttered with canning jars and bundles of drying herbs that filled the air with a pleasant, spicy scent that barely masked another, more chemical odor underneath. She busied herself making fresh tea, seemingly unconcerned by my stunned silence or the mud I tracked across her clean floors. Only when she'd placed a steaming mug before me and settled herself across the table did she finally address what I'd witnessed. "The Kowalskis have been intermediaries for centuries," she said matter-of-factly. "First in the old country, then here after the migration. Someone has to negotiate the boundaries, establish the rules of engagement. Without agreements, there's only predation on both sides." According to Virginia, the entities, the hollow folk, as she called them, had inhabited the deep places of the earth since long before human evolution. They weren't supernatural beings or aliens, but a parallel branch of terrestrial evolution that had adapted to subterranean existence, developing along radically different lines than surface life. They possessed intelligence and culture of sorts, though organized around principles so alien that human minds could barely comprehend their society. Most importantly, they had needs that occasionally brought them into conflict with humanity, primarily their requirement for certain chemical compounds found only in the blood of surface mammals, compounds essential to their reproductive cycle. The agreements are simple, Virginia continued, sipping her tea with remarkable calm. They take only what they need, no more than 12 surface dwellers each year, and only those who've strayed into their territory knowingly. In exchange, they maintain the stability of the ground around our settlements, prevent the mine fire from consuming what remains of the town, and warn us of dangers in the deep places. She must have seen the horror on my face, for she added quickly, I don't choose their victims, girl. I simply ensure they understand our boundaries, and lately, remind them that there are fewer acceptable targets each year as the town empties. But you, she looked at me with genuine regret. You built your house on their gathering place, photographed their sacred circle, witnessed their rites uninvited. By their laws, you're already theirs. My shock gave way to desperate anger. So you sent me through those tunnels knowing they'd follow? Made me a sacrificial lamb to maintain your precious agreement? I half rose from my chair, though I had nowhere to run, no plan beyond getting away from this woman who spoke so casually of human sacrifice. Virginia's expression hardened, and suddenly she looked far older and more dangerous than the frail old woman I'd first met. Sit down, she commanded, and to my surprise, I found myself obeying. If I'd wanted to feed you to them, girl, I'd have simply left you to your fate last night. The tunnels were your only chance. Most who've been marked manage to escape through them. The iron weakens the mark, you see, makes you harder for them to track. She rose stiffly and crossed to an ancient roll-top desk in the corner, retrieving a manila folder stuffed with newspaper clippings. These she spread before me, dozens of articles spanning decades, all reporting disappearances or unusual deaths in the region surrounding Centralia. Every one of these people encountered the Hollow Folk, Virginia explained. Most were marked, like you. Some escaped, some didn't. She tapped one clipping from 1987, showing a smiling young man standing beside a "Welcome to Centralia" sign. My son, Thomas, fancied himself a photographer too. Went looking for evidence of the Hollow Folk after seeing them during the autumn gathering. They took him into the deep places. Her voice remained steady, but her fingers trembled slightly against the yellowed paper. 3 days later, something wearing his skin came back, thinking I wouldn't notice the difference. I've kept it in the root cellar ever since. My blood ran cold at her words, the implications too horrible to fully process. Before I could respond, a subtle vibration passed through the house. Not quite an earthquake, but a deep, rhythmic trembling that caused the teacups to chatter against their saucers. Virginia's head snapped up, alarm evident in her suddenly alert posture. They're gathering again, she whispered, moving quickly to the window. Too soon. It shouldn't be for another month at least. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, but in the direction of my property, an ominous orange glow pulsed against the low-hanging clouds. The fire, Virginia murmured. It must have breached a new chamber. They feed on the heat, you know, grow stronger in its presence. A high, keening sound cut through the night. That same unearthly singing I'd heard before, but magnified hundredfold, as if dozens or even hundreds of voices now joined the chorus. The vibration intensified, picture frames tilting on walls, a glass falling from a shelf to shatter on the floor. Virginia turned to me, real fear in her eyes for the first time. Something's changed. The balance is shifting. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, pulling me toward her back door. We need to leave, now? Get to my truck. Whatever happens, don't stop, don't look back. She snatched keys from a hook by the door, then hesitated, returning to the kitchen to retrieve something from a drawer, an ancient, rust-spotted revolver that she thrust into my hands. Iron bullets, she explained grimly. Won't kill them, but might slow them down. We burst through the back door onto the porch, the same porch where I'd seen Virginia communing with the entities just hours before. The night air hit us like a physical force, hot and thick with that acrid chemical smell, now so strong it made my eyes water. In the direction of my property, the sky had taken on an unnatural crimson hue, as if the very air were bleeding. The ground beneath our feet trembled continuously, small fissures opening in Virginia's yard, wisps of smoke rising from each new crack. "The truck," Virginia gasped, pointing to her ancient pickup parked beside the house. "We'll take the old logging road north. Get clear of their territory before." Her words cut off abruptly as the ground between us and the vehicle split open with a sound like tearing fabric. From the newborn fissure rose one of the entities, not one of the smaller ones I'd seen before, nor even one of the larger variety I'd witnessed Virginia speaking with, but something far more massive and terrible. It towered at least 12 feet high, its elongated body seeming to continue down into the crack from which it emerged. Where the others had possessed that circular arrangement of vertical slits, this being's face was a writhing mass of what appeared to be thin, prehensile tentacles, constantly moving and rearranging themselves around a central opening that glowed with the same orange-red light as the distant fire. Virginia stepped forward, arms raised as if to shield me, speaking rapidly in a language I didn't recognize, harsh consonants and long, sibilant vowels that seemed to hurt my ears. The massive entity paused, its tentacle face rippling in what might have been consideration. Then it responded, not in the same language, but in a series of deep vibrations that I felt in my chest cavity rather than heard with my ears. Whatever it communicated caused Virginia to stiffen, her shoulders slumping in what appeared to be defeat or resignation. She turned to me, her weathered face now looking truly ancient in the unnatural light. "The agreement is void," she said simply. "The fire has opened the deep gate. What comes through is beyond my authority to bind or banish." More fissures were opening across the yard now, smaller entities emerging from each one, dozens of them, both the human-sized variety and the larger ones I'd seen at Virginia's gathering. They formed a circle around us, moving with that same unsettling synchronicity I'd witnessed before. Virginia grabbed my arm again, pulling me back toward her house. "The root cellar," she hissed. "Iron walls, remember? It's kept my son's hollow shell contained for decades. It might shield us until dawn." We retreated step by step up the porch stairs, the revolver heavy and useless in my trembling hands. The entities made no move to pursue us directly, but neither did they disperse, their circle tightening slightly as we backed away. We had almost reached the door when the massive entity made a gesture with one impossibly long arm. The ground beneath the porch gave way with a sickening lurch, wooden boards splintering as the entire structure collapsed into a newly formed sinkhole. Virginia cried out as she fell, her hand torn from my grasp. I managed to cling to the doorframe, hauling myself into the relative safety of the house as the porch disappeared entirely into the earth. "Virginia!" I screamed, peering into the darkness below. There was no response except a faint groan of settling earth and the continued rhythmic humming of the entities, now arrayed around the edge of the sinkhole like mourners at a grave. I slammed the door and barricaded it, though I knew such barriers meant little to beings that could move through solid ground. The iron revolver was still clutched in my white-knuckled grip, forgotten until this moment. 6 shots, 6 iron bullets against what appeared to be an army of entities now converging on the house. Through the windows, I could see more fissures opening across the property, the entire area becoming unstable as whatever force had kept the ground intact, part of Virginia's agreement, apparently, was now withdrawn. In the distance, toward my own property, the red glow had intensified to an infernal brightness, silhouetting the trees against a sky that looked like the backdrop of some Renaissance painting of hell. My survival instincts finally overcame shock. I needed transportation. Virginia's truck was now unreachable beyond the sinkhole, but I remembered she kept an old dirt bike in a shed behind the house. If I could reach it, perhaps I could navigate the back roads and escape the area before the entire ground collapsed beneath me. I moved cautiously through Virginia's house, aware of the subtle vibrations still running through the structure. Glass trinkets rattled on shelves, and thin cracks were spreading across the ceiling plaster. Outside, the eerie singing continued, now accompanied by a rhythmic pounding that seemed to come from all directions at once. The back door led to a small, overgrown yard. In the hellish red glow illuminating the night, I could see the shed about 30 yards away. Between me and it lay open ground, completely exposed to whatever watched from the widening fissures. Taking a deep breath, I bolted from the doorway, the iron revolver clutched tightly in my sweat-slick palm. I had made it halfway to the shed when the ground before me split open with that now familiar tearing sound. I skidded to a halt as a pale, elongated figure emerged, one of the smaller entities, its blank face turning toward me with mechanical precision. Without thinking, I raised the revolver and fired. The iron bullet struck the entity squarely where a human chest would be, and the effect was immediate and horrifying. The entity's form seemed to ripple, its outline becoming temporarily indistinct, like a television image during bad reception. It emitted a high-pitched, keening sound that made my teeth ache, then collapsed in on itself, folding into the earth as if being absorbed. 5 bullets left. I ran again, reaching the shed and yanking open its weathered door. Inside sat Virginia's ancient dirt bike, its red paint faded to a dull rust color. I had ridden motorcycles before. Part of my job as a wildlife photographer sometimes required navigating rough terrain, but this machine looked like it hadn't been started in years. My hands trembled as I checked the fuel tank, nearly empty, but perhaps enough to get me to the highway. As I wheeled the bike outside, the ground trembled violently, nearly knocking me off my feet. The shed collapsed behind me with a groan of failing timber. In the distance, I could see more of the entities emerging, their tall forms silhouetted against the crimson sky as they converged on Virginia's property. The massive one with the tentacle face remained by the porch sinkhole, its writhing appendages now probing deep into the earth where Virginia had fallen. I kick-started the bike, the engine catching after 3 desperate attempts. Its sputtering roar seemed obscenely loud in the preternatural quiet that had fallen over the scene. Every entity turned toward the sound, their blank faces swiveling with perfect synchronicity. Then, as one, they began to move toward me. I gunned the engine and took off down a narrow dirt path leading away from the house, heading north as Virginia had suggested before her fall. The bike bounced wildly over the uneven ground, each jolt threatening to throw me off. Behind me, I could hear the singing growing louder, more frenzied, the sound somehow keeping pace despite my speed. The path led into thick woods, the trees pressing close on either side. In the darkness, I could barely make out the trail, navigating more by feel than sight. Branches whipped at my face, leaving stinging welts across my skin. But worse than these physical assaults was the growing certainty that I was being herded rather than pursued, that my desperate flight was following a course laid out by the entities themselves. This suspicion was confirmed when I broke into a small clearing and found my way blocked by a line of the tall, thin figures standing motionless in the moonlight. I veered sharply, taking a smaller trail to the east, only to find minutes later that path too blocked by waiting entities. Each time I changed direction, they were already there, anticipating my movements with uncanny precision. With growing horror, I realized I was being driven in a circle, back toward the area where the red glow burned brightest, back toward my own property. The dirt bike's engine sputtered ominously, the fuel gauge now firmly on empty. It died completely just as I emerged from the woods onto what had once been my front yard. What greeted me defied comprehension. Where my farmhouse had stood was now a gaping pit, easily 50 feet across, its edges crumbling inward as I watched. From its depths rose that same orange-red light I'd seen in the distance, but now I could see its source, a river of liquid fire flowing through what appeared to be a vast underground chamber exposed by the collapse. The mine fire had finally broken through, revealing not just burning coal seams, but an entire network of cavernous spaces that should not have existed at such shallow depth. Moving around the edges of this pit were dozens of entities of all sizes, from the human-sized ones to several of the massive tentacle-faced variants. They were engaged in what appeared to be some sort of excavation, widening the opening with those impossibly long limbs, pulling chunks of earth aside with methodical precision. And rising from the center of the pit, held aloft by 6 of the largest entities, was a structure I recognized with dawning horror. The stone altar from the circular meadow, now glowing with the same internal light I had seen in my dream. I abandoned the useless dirt bike and crouched behind a fallen tree, watching as the entities placed the altar at the very edge of the burning river. The singing reached a crescendo, the sound now so loud it seemed to vibrate the air itself. Then, from the depths of the pit, something began to emerge, something far larger and more terrible than any entity I had yet seen. It rose slowly, a vast amorphous shape that seemed to consist of the same darkness I had glimpsed in the circular tunnel underground, but now given form and substance. As it breached the surface, it began to coalesce into a more defined shape. A mountainous body supported by countless rippling limbs, crowned by not one but dozens of the circular, slit-filled faces, each opening and closing in hypnotic patterns that seemed to pull at my very consciousness. The massive shape paused, hovering half-emerged from the pit, its multiple faces turning in all directions as if surveying its new domain. When those faces turned toward my hiding place, I felt a pressure inside my skull, as if something were trying to push its way into my mind. Instinctively, I raised the revolver, though I knew its remaining 5 bullets would be useless against something of this magnitude. "They call it the Hollow King," came a voice from beside me. I nearly screamed, turning to find Virginia crouched there, her clothes torn and dirty, blood running from a nasty gash on her forehead. Ancient even to them, it sleeps in the deepest places, waking only when the boundaries thin enough to feed. Her eyes were fixed on the monstrosity, her expression one of grim resignation. The fire weakened the walls between its realm and ours. "Now it rises. How did you?" I began, but she cut me off with a sharp gesture. "No time. The convergence has begun. Within hours, it will have consumed enough heat from the fire to manifest fully in our world." She gripped my arm, her fingers digging painfully into my flesh. "There's only one way to stop it now. The deep gate must be closed before it can fully emerge." "How?" I asked, desperation making my voice crack. "The altar is the key. It was carved from stone taken from the king's own realm. Serves as an anchor for the opening." She nodded toward the revolver in my hand. "Iron disrupts their essence. Enough of it, delivered at the convergence point where the altar meets the fire, might collapse the opening." I looked down at the 5 remaining bullets, then back at the scene before us. "It's not enough," I whispered. Virginia reached into her pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch, spilling its contents into my palm. A dozen more iron bullets, identical to those in the revolver. "Thomas's gun held more than yours," she said quietly. "I've been saving these, knowing this day would come. But I'm too old, too slow to get close enough." Her eyes met mine, the firelight reflecting in them like twin flames. "You've been marked. You can approach the altar without them immediately sensing you. I can create a distraction, draw their attention long enough for you to get into position." Before I could protest, she was already moving, circling away through the underbrush with surprising stealth for a woman her age. I hurriedly reloaded the revolver with trembling fingers, knowing what she proposed was likely suicide for us both. But as I watched the massive entity continue to rise from the pit, felt the ground trembling beneath me with increasing violence, I realized we had no choice. Whatever this Hollow King was, its emergence into our world would mean an end to everything I knew. I waited until I heard Virginia's voice, loud and clear, calling out in that same harsh language she had used before. Every entity around the pit turned toward the sound, their movements now agitated, less synchronized. Taking advantage of their distraction, I sprinted from my hiding place toward the altar, keeping low and moving as quickly as the unstable ground would allow. I was within 20 feet of my target when one of the smaller entities spotted me, emitting a high-pitched alarm call that cut through the singing like a knife. Instantly, several of the larger ones turned, their blank faces fixing on me with predatory focus. I fired the revolver twice in quick succession, dropping 2 of them as they lunged toward me. The others hesitated, clearly wary of the iron bullets. That momentary hesitation was all I needed. I closed the distance to the altar, pressing the revolver's barrel directly against the ancient stone where it glowed brightest. The heat was incredible, searing my skin even through my clothing. Behind me, I could hear the entities recovering from their surprise, could feel their approach like a physical pressure against my back. From somewhere across the pit came Virginia's voice one last time. "Now, girl. End it now." I emptied the revolver into the altar at point-blank range, the iron bullets driving deep into the glowing stone. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the altar began to vibrate, hairline fractures spreading across its surface, that internal light pulsing erratically like a failing heartbeat. The nearest entities recoiled, their movements suddenly uncoordinated, almost panicked. A deafening crack split the air as the altar shattered, fragments of stone flying in all directions. One sliced across my cheek, the cut burning as if the stone were acidic. From the shattered remains, a column of blindingly bright fire erupted upward, connecting with the partially emerged form of the Hollow King hovering above. What followed defies description, a convergence of sound and light and movement that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around it. The king's massive form began to contort, those multiple faces all opening wide in what must have been a scream, though what emerged was not sound but a wave of psychic pain so intense I fell to my knees, blood running from my nose and ears. The ground beneath the pit began to collapse inward, taking the burning river and the remains of the altar with it. The entities scattered in all directions, their movements now chaotic and uncontrolled. The king's form was being pulled downward, back into the depths from which it had emerged, those countless limbs thrashing wildly as it fought against the gravitational force of the collapsing gate. I crawled backward, away from the expanding sinkhole, until my back hit solid stone, the remaining wall of my root cellar, somehow still intact despite the destruction all around it. From this relative safety, I watched as the last traces of the Hollow King disappeared into the earth, followed by a final massive tremor that shook the entire forest. Then, abruptly, silence fell. The red glow dimmed, replaced by the normal orange-yellow light of burning coal. The mine fire remained, but whatever doorway it had opened was now closed. Of the entities, I could see no sign, whether they had fled back to their subterranean domain or been pulled in with their king. I couldn't tell. As dawn broke over the devastated landscape, I made my way cautiously around the edge of what had once been my property, searching for any sign of Virginia. I found her coat snagged on a fallen tree near where I'd last heard her voice, the fabric torn and scorched. Of the woman herself, there was no trace. I salvaged what I could from my truck, which had somehow remained intact at the edge of the property, and began the long walk toward the highway. As I reached the main road, I looked back one last time at the ruined land that had so briefly been my home. Thin tendrils of smoke still rose from numerous fissures in the ground, the only visible reminder of what had transpired during the night. The Hollow folk were gone, or at least returned to their deep places, but the mark they had left on me remained. I could feel it like a shadow just behind my eyes, a permanent connection to whatever lay beneath the burning earth of Centralia. And sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, I still hear that eerie, multi-voiced singing, rising from far below the surface of consciousness. I've moved far from Pennsylvania since then, as far as I could get from coal country and its hidden horrors. But I keep Virginia's iron key on a chain around my neck, and the walls of my new home are lined with iron nails, a precaution against the day when the barriers thin once more, and what dwells in the hollow places of the earth comes looking for the one who closed their gate. Because I know, with a certainty that transcends rational thought, that the Hollow King still sleeps in the deep places, and it remembers my name. I'm Elias Warwick, 34 years old, and I swear I never thought I'd end up here. My boots sink into the damp earth outside my cabin near Coudersport, Pennsylvania, where the air smells like pine and something faintly sour. I moved out here 6 months ago, chasing silence after a nasty divorce. City life chewed me up, so I bought this rickety place. 2 rooms, no neighbors, just me and the trees. It's freeing, but the woods have a way of watching you. My only company is my dog, Juno, a scrappy mutt who growls at nothing sometimes. I tell myself it's squirrels, but her hackles raise too often. The locals in town, maybe 10 miles down a dirt road, warn me about these woods. Old-timers at the diner muttered about the Green Whisper, a myth they don't like spelling out. They say it's no bear or bobcat. It's something older, tied to the Susquehannock tribes who vanished here centuries ago. I laughed it off, figuring it's just small-town hokum. But last week, I found claw marks on my shed, too high for any animal I know. They weren't random. They looked deliberate, like a message. I'm not alone out here, not entirely. There's Ren Calvert, a 29-year-old artist who lives a mile west in a converted trailer. She's all sharp edges and quiet eyes, sketching creepy charcoal scenes of twisted trees. We trade supplies sometimes. She's handy with a bow, hunts her own game. Then there's Tobin Hess, 42, a grizzled ex-Marine who built his cabin 2 miles east. He's paranoid, always muttering about keeping watch. We're not friends, but we're not strangers either. We're just here. The first month was fine. I chopped wood, fixed leaks, felt like I was rebuilding myself. But the nights are long, and the quiet isn't quiet. There's a hum in the air sometimes, like a low chant you can't quite catch. Juno hears it too. She'll stare at the window, whining. I tell myself it's the wind, but it feels personal, like something's testing me. I started keeping a journal, noting weird stuff. Misplaced tools, a dead crow on my porch with no marks. It's unsettling, but I'm not packing up yet. Ren stopped by last week, her face pale. She said her sketches were changing, lines she didn't draw, faces in the trees. I thought she was messing with me, but she showed me one, a figure, tall and thin, woven into the branches. It was disturbing, like it was watching us through the paper. I told her to lay off the late-night whiskey, but I couldn't shake the image. Tobin's been scarce too, only leaving notes about patrols at my doorstep. Guy's losing it, I think. I'm practical, always have been. Used to fix cars for a living, so I know how to troubleshoot. But out here, logic slips. Like when I found my axe buried in a stump I didn't touch, blade gleaming like it was polished. I checked the trail cam. Nothing but static for 3 hours that night. The horror of it isn't loud. It's slow, creeping into your bones. I keep my shotgun loaded now, though I'm not sure what I'm aiming at. Juno's restless tonight, pacing by the door. The green whisper myth keeps nagging at me. The diner folks said it's not just a spirit, it's a hunger. They say it doesn't kill quick. It plays with you, makes you doubt yourself. I'm not superstitious, but I carved a protection rune into my doorframe, copying one from Ren's sketchbook. Probably nonsense, but it felt good to do something. The woods are darker tonight, thicker somehow. I catch myself holding my breath, waiting for what? I try to stay busy. Fixed the cabin's chimney yesterday, hauled water from the creek. But every task feels watched. I found a pile of bones near the creek, small, maybe a rabbit, but arranged in a circle. Who does that? Not a coyote, that's for sure. I kicked them apart, heart pounding, and hightailed it back home. The scary thing isn't the bones themselves. It's the idea someone, or something, left them for me to find. Juno's barking now, low and guttural, staring at the window. I grab my flashlight, but the beam barely cuts the dark. The glass reflects my face, pale and drawn, and for a second, I swear I see another shape behind me. I spin around, nothing. My pulse is hammering, and the cabin feels too small. I tell myself I'm just spooked, but deep down, I know something's wrong. Something's out there, and it's not just in my head. Juno's barking doesn't stop, and I'm gripping the shotgun tighter than I'd like to admit. The cabin's walls feel like they're closing in, and the dark outside Coudersport's woods is thicker than last night. I crack the window, hoping fresh air will calm me, but it's heavy with that sour smell again, like something rotting just out of sight. I mutter to Juno to hush, but she's fixated on the tree line, her ears pinned back. I'm trying to stay cool, but the horror of this place is starting to claw at me. I decide to check the trail cam again, even though it's been glitchy. The footage is a mess, more static, but there's a frame, just one, where something tall flashes by. It's blurry, but it's not a deer or a person. Too thin, too wrong. My stomach twists, and I delete it, telling myself it's a glitch. But I'm lying, and I know it. I head outside to clear my head, shotgun slung over my shoulder. The air's cold, and the stars are gone, swallowed by clouds. Ren shows up around noon, her bow slung across her back. She's twitchy, eyes darting to the trees. She says her trailer's been messed with. Her door was open last night, and her sketches were scattered on the floor. She swears she locked it. I try to joke, say maybe she's got a raccoon problem, but her glare shuts me up. She's scared, and that's disturbing because Ren doesn't scare easy. She asks if I've seen Tobin lately. I haven't, not since his last cryptic note about keeping the perimeter. We decide to trek to Tobin's cabin, figuring he might know something. The walk's tense. Every snapped twig makes me jump. Ren's quiet, clutching her bow like it's a lifeline. The woods feel alive, not in a good way. I spot a tree with fresh scratches, deep and jagged, like the ones on my shed. Ren notices too, but doesn't say anything. We're both thinking it. This isn't normal. The scary part is how deliberate it feels, like something's marking its territory. Tobin's cabin is a fortress, barbed wire, motion lights, the works. But it's too quiet. His truck's there, but no Tobin. We knock, call out, nothing. The door's ajar, and inside, it's a wreck. Maps pinned to the walls, red string connecting dots like a conspiracy nut's dream. Ren finds a journal, pages scrawled with "it sees me" and "don't look." My skin crawls. Tobin's not just paranoid, he's terrified. We grab the journal and leave, promising to check back tomorrow. Back at my place, I'm rattled. Juno's still on edge, and I'm starting to feel like I'm being watched, even inside. I try to distract myself by fixing a loose floorboard, but my hammer's missing. I know I left it on the table. It's small, but it's wrong, and it piles onto the horror of this place. I think about leaving, just packing up and driving back to Pittsburgh. But I sank everything into this cabin, my savings, my sanity. I can't just walk away. Ren stays for dinner, and we try to keep it light, talking about her art, my old mechanic days. But the conversation keeps drifting back to the woods, the marks, Tobin. She says the Green Whisper myth isn't just a story. Her grandma, Hart Susquehannock, said it's a spirit that feeds on fear, twisting your mind before it takes you. I roll my eyes, but I'm not as sure as I was. The air feels heavy, like it's pressing down on us. Juno whines, staring at the door again. I decide to set up more lights outside, thinking it'll help. I'm wiring a floodlight when I hear it. A low hum, like a chant, just like before. It's faint, but it's there, coming from the woods. I freeze, heart pounding. Ren hears it too. Her face goes white. We don't say anything, just stand there, listening. It stops after a minute, but the silence is worse. I tell Ren to crash here tonight. No way she's walking back alone. By midnight, we're both jumpy. I'm checking the locks for the third time when I notice something outside. A shape, just beyond the light's reach. It's tall, unmoving, and gone when I blink. I tell myself it's a tree, but my hands are shaking. Ren's asleep on the couch, but Juno's awake, growling low. The disturbing truth is sinking in. Whatever's out there, it's not just passing through. It's here for us, and I don't know how to stop it. I'm wide awake, clutching my shotgun, staring at the cabin door as the wind howls outside. Coudersportswoods feel like they're alive tonight, and not in a poetic way. Juno's growl is constant now, her eyes locked on the window. Ren's stirring on the couch, mumbling in her sleep, and I'm trying not to lose it. That shape I saw outside, tall, wrong, keeps replaying in my mind. The horror of it isn't just what I saw, it's what I felt, like it was sizing me up. I check the floodlight I rigged up, but it's flickering, casting jagged shadows across the yard. I step outside, heart hammering, to fix it. The air's thick, that sour rot smell stronger now. I'm twisting wires when I hear it. A sharp crack, like a branch snapping, but too loud, too close. I swing the shotgun up, scanning the trees. Nothing, but the hairs on my neck are screaming. Something's out there, and it's not hiding anymore. Back inside, Ren's awake, her bow in hand. She saw something too, a shadow moving near the shed, too fast to be human. We're whispering now, like talking loud will summon it. I show her Tobin's journal, the frantic scrawls about eyes in the dark, and it knows my name. It's disturbing, like he was unraveling. Ren says we need to find him, but I'm not sure I want to. Whatever's got him spooked, it's here now, and it feels personal. We decide to check the trail cam again, desperate for answers. The footage is worse this time, not just static, but a loop of the same frame. That tall, thin shape, standing at the edge of the clearing. It's not moving, just watching. My stomach drops. I think of those horror movies where the monster's always one step ahead, like it's playing with you. This feels like that, but real, and I'm not sure we're the ones who get to scream and run. Juno bolts to the door, barking so hard she's shaking. I grab her collar, but then we hear it. A voice, low and garbled, like it's coming from underwater. It's outside, chanting something I can't make out. Ren's face is ghost white. She says it's the Green Whisper, just like her grandma warned. I want to call it nonsense, but the air's buzzing, like static before a storm. The scary part? The voice knows my name. It's saying Elias between the chants. We barricade the door with the table, but it feels pointless. The windows are rattling, not from wind, but from something pressing against them. I catch a glimpse outside, a handprint on the glass, long and bony, with too many fingers. It's gone when I look again, but my chest's tight, like I can't breathe. Ren's muttering prayers, half in English, half in something older. I'm not religious, but I'm wishing I was. I try to call for help, but my phone's dead. No signal, no power, nothing. The cabin's lights dim, then surge, like something's messing with the wiring. I think of Tobin's maps, his obsession with the perimeter. Maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe he saw this coming. We find a knife in the kitchen, and I give it to Ren. She's shaking but nods, ready to fight. The horror's real now, and we're not just spooked, we're trapped. The chanting stops, and the silence is worse. Then, a scream, human, raw, coming from the woods. It's Tobin, I know it. Ren wants to go after him, but I grab her arm. It's a trap, I say, my voice cracking. She pulls free, eyes wild, saying we can't leave him. I'm torn. Part of me wants to bolt, but Tobin's one of us, even if he's a nut. The disturbing truth hits. Whatever's out there, it's not just hunting. It's hurting us. We're arguing when the door shakes, hard, like something slammed into it. Juno's losing it, and I'm shouting at Ren to stay back. The wood splinters, just a crack, but it's enough to show something on the other side. Pale, impossibly tall, with eyes that glow like embers. It's not a bear, not a man. It's the Green Whisper, and it's here. My blood's ice, and I know, deep down, we're not just fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our souls. The door splinters further, and I'm screaming at Ren to move. That thing, tall, pale, with glowing eyes, slams against the wood again, and Juno's barking is deafening. I grab my shotgun, hands slick with sweat, and fire through the door. The blast echoes, but there's no scream, no thud, just silence, then a low chuckle, like nails on glass. The horror's suffocating. This isn't just a monster, it's toying with us. Ren's got her bow, eyes wide, and we bolt for the back window, knowing the front's a death trap. We climb out, Juno scrambling behind, and hit the ground running. The woods around Coudersport are a maze of shadows, branches clawing at us. The air's thick, that sour rot smell choking me. I hear it behind us. That chant, my name woven into it. Elias, Elias. Ren's panting, arrow knocked, but we don't look back. It's a life or death sprint, and every step feels like we're slipping closer to death. We aim for Tobin's cabin, hoping his fortress holds. The trail's familiar, but tonight it's warped, trees leaning in like they're alive. I trip on a root, scraping my knee bloody, and Ren hauls me up. Her face is grim, but she's not quitting. The scary part isn't just the thing chasing us. It's the feeling it's hurting us, like we're rats in a maze. My shotgun's heavy, but I cling to it, praying it'll do something. A scream cuts through the dark. Tobin, closer now. We veer toward it, dodging low branches. The ground's slick with moss, and I nearly drop the gun. Ren's whispering, don't stop, like a mantra. Then we see it. Tobin's cabin, lights flickering. But there's blood on the porch, smeared like a warning. My heart's in my throat. This is bad, real bad. We're walking into a trap, but we've got no choice. Inside, it's worse. Tobin's slumped against the wall, gutted, eyes wide with terror. His journal's clutched in his hand, pages soaked red. Ren gags, and I'm fighting not to puke. The disturbing truth hits. The Green Whisper didn't just kill him, it savored it. We grab his machete and a flare gun, then hear it, a creak above us. The ceiling groans, like something heavy's moving. We're not alone in here. We burst out the back, flare gun in my hand, and run for the creek. The plan's shaky. Cross the water, lose the scent, head for town. The woods are screaming now. Wind, chance, something else. I fire a flare skyward, hoping someone sees it. The red glow lights up the trees, and for a second, I see it. Tall, bony, moving too fast. Ren shoots an arrow, but it vanishes. The horror's clear. It's not just fast, it's unnatural. The creek's icy, thigh deep, and Juno's struggling. I lift her, my arms burning, while Ren covers us. The water slows us down, and I feel it closing in, that chant louder, angrier. I'm thinking of those old Susquehannock tales, how the whisper drowns you in fear before it takes you. My boots slip on rocks, but we make it across, lungs burning. The town's miles away, and I'm not sure we'll make it. We're climbing a ridge when Ren screams. Something grabs her ankle, a pale, clawed hand from the brush. I swing the machete, hacking wildly, and it lets go with a hiss. Ren's bleeding, but she's up, limping. We're running again, but the ridge is steep and my legs are jelly. The scary thing is, I'm starting to think it's letting us run, like it's enjoying the chase. We reach a clearing, the town's lights faint in the distance. I'm gasping, ready to collapse, when the ground shakes. It's here, right behind us, its shadow swallowing the moonlight. Ren's loading another arrow, and I'm raising the shotgun, but my hands are shaking. Juno's snarling, ready to fight. This is it, life or death, and I'm not sure we're the ones who get to live. The thing steps into the clearing, and my blood freezes. It's taller than any man, skin like wet clay, eyes burning red. The green whisper's real, and it's worse than any myth. I fire the shotgun, the blast deafening, but it just staggers, laughing that glass scrape laugh. Ren's arrow hits its shoulder, and it snarls, but doesn't fall. The horror's crushing, we're fighting a nightmare, and it's winning. Juno lunges, teeth bared, and I scream for her to stop. She doesn't listen. Juno clamps onto its leg, and for a second, I think she's got it. Then it swipes, fast as a snake, and Juno's thrown against a tree with a sickening crunch. She yelps once, then goes still. My heart rips apart. She's been with me through everything. I'm screaming, swinging the machete, but it's like hitting stone. Ren's dragging me back, yelling we have to go. We run, tears blurring my vision. The town's closer, but the whisper's on us, its chant pounding in my skull. I'm thinking of Tobin, gutted, and Juno, broken. This thing doesn't just kill, it destroys you, piece by piece. Ren's limping bad, blood soaking her pant leg. I'm half carrying her, but we're slowing down. The disturbing truth is, we're not outrunning this. I remember the flare gun, one shot left. I fire it at the thing, point blank, as it lunges. The flare hits its chest, and it screeches, a sound that makes my ears bleed. It stumbles, clawing at the fire, and we bolt. For a moment, I think we've won. The town's lights are brighter, and I can hear a truck in the distance. But the scary part? The screeching stops, and the chant starts again, closer than ever. We're at the edge of Coudersport, houses in sight, when Ren trips, her leg giving out. I try to lift her, but she's heavy, and I'm spent. She's begging me to leave her, but I can't. Not after Juno, not after Tobin. That's my mistake. I'm hauling her up when I feel it. Cold, sharp claws on my shoulder. The whisper's right behind me, breath hot and rancid. I swing the machete, but it's too late. Ren screams as it grabs her, yanking her into the dark. I'm slashing, shouting her name, but she's gone, just like that. The woods go silent, no chant, no screeches. I stumble into town, banging on the first door I see. The old guy who answers looks at me like I'm crazy, but he calls the sheriff. I'm babbling about Ren, Juno, Tobin, but they don't believe me. The horror's not just what happened, it's that no one will. They search the woods, find Tobin's body, Juno's too. No Ren, no trace. The sheriff says it's a bear, but I see the doubt in his eyes. I'm back in my cabin now, doors locked, shotgun loaded. I can't leave. Where would I go? The tragedy isn't just losing them, it's knowing I'm next. The green whisper's still out there, and it knows my name. Every night, I hear it. That low chant, creeping closer. I found Ren's bough in the yard yesterday, snapped in half, like a taunt. The disturbing truth keeps me awake. It's not done with me. I carve runes into every wall, but they don't help. The air's heavy, the sour smell back. I'm writing this down, hoping someone finds it, because I don't think I'll make it. Last night, I saw it outside, standing just beyond the light. It didn't move, just watched, its eyes burning. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm waiting. The horror's won, and the cruelest part? It let me think I could escape. The chant's louder now, and my name's in it. The door's rattling, and I'm out of flares, out of hope. If you're reading this, run. Don't come to Coudersport. Don't face the green whisper. I'm Nora Kessel, 38 years old, and I'm staring at the flickering lantern on my porch in the woods outside Kane, Pennsylvania. I moved here 3 months ago, trading Philly's noise for this creaky cabin and a chance to breathe. After my bookstore went bust, I needed a reset. Off-grid, just me, my books, and the quiet. But quiet's a lie out here. The forest hums with something I can't name, and the fog so thick it feels like it's watching me. My only companion's my cat, Sable, who's taken to hissing at corners. Kane's a small town, maybe 15 miles away, and the locals are cagey. At the gas station, they whispered about the Kane Wraith, a ghost or something worse from the old logging days. They say it haunts these woods, tied to settlers who vanished in the 1800s. I brushed it off as campfire talk, but their eyes weren't joking. Last week, I found a weird mark on my door, 3 slashes, deep, like claws. It's unsettling, but I'm stubborn. I'm not totally alone out here. There's Gideon Parr, 45, a gruff carpenter who lives a mile north in a log house he built himself. He's all flannel and frowns, but he's helped me fix my roof twice. Then there's Lila Voss, 27, a botanist studying rare plants, camped a mile south in a tent. She's intense, always scribbling in her notebook. We're not close, but we swap stories over coffee sometimes. They're my tether to sanity. The cabin's cozy enough, with stove, solar panels, a loft for my bed. I spend days reading, gardening, trying to rebuild myself. But the nights are rough. Sable's been acting weird, staring at the windows like she sees something I don't. I've started noticing things too. My shovel moved, a dead sparrow on my steps with its eyes gone. It's small, but it piles up, and the horror of it's starting to creep in. Gideon stopped by yesterday, hauling firewood. He saw the slashes on my door and went quiet. Said he's got similar marks on his shed, blamed it on a cougar. But his hands were shaking, and Gideon's not the shaky type. He told me to keep my rifle handy, said the woods aren't right. I laughed, but I checked the rifle's chamber that night. The scary part? I'm not sure what I'm scared of. Lila's been odd too. She came by last week, her notebook full of sketches, not plants, but symbols, like the ones on my door. She said she found them carved into trees near her camp, old and weathered. She's obsessed, thinks they're tied to the Wraith myth. I told her to ease up, but her eyes were wild, like she'd seen something. It's disturbing how fast she's unraveling. I'm practical, always have been. Ran a business, kept books balanced. But out here, logic phrase. Like when I found my garden torn up, roots arranged in a spiral. No animal does that. I set up a motion light, but it flickers at night, catching nothing. The horror isn't loud. It's patient, sinking into you. I keep my rifle by the door now, though I'm not sure it'll help. The Wraith myth keeps nagging me. Locals say it's no ghost. It's a curse, born from greed and blood in the logging camps. It doesn't just kill, it breaks you first, makes you see things. I'm not buying it, but I scratched a protection symbol into my window frame, one I saw in Lila's notebook. Feels silly, but I did it anyway. The fog's thicker tonight, swallowing the stars. Sable's hissing now, back arched, staring at the door. I grab the rifle, heart thumping, and peek outside. The lantern's dim, but I swear I see a shape in the fog, tall, hunched, gone when I blink. My pulse is racing, and the cabin feels too small. I tell myself it's just the dark playing tricks, but deep down, I know something's wrong. Something's out there, and it's closer than I think. Sable's hissing wakes me, her claws digging into my arm. It's 3 a.m., and the cabin's freezing, the wood stove dead despite the logs I stacked last night. Outside Kane's foggy woods, the air feels wrong, like it's holding its breath. I grab my rifle, heart thumping, and check the windows. The motion light's on, but it's flickering, catching nothing but mist. The horror's subtle, but it's there, like a splinter under my skin. Sable's still staring at the door, and I'm starting to think she's not just spooked. I check the door's slashes, 3 deep cuts, fresh again, like they were carved overnight. My stomach twists. I know I'd have heard something. I step outside, rifle ready, and the fog's so thick I can barely see the trees. There's a new mark on the porch, a spiral, like my ruined garden. It's disturbing, too precise for a bear or a prank. I'm thinking of those old Wraith stories, and they don't feel so silly now. Lila shows up mid-morning, her backpack stuffed with notebooks. She's jittery, hair tangled, saying she found more symbols near her camp, dozens, carved into rocks. She shows me a sketch, a twisted figure, hunched, with hollow eyes. It's the kind of thing you'd see in a horror flick, but it's real, and it's here. I try to joke, say she's been up too late, but her glare shuts me up. She's scared, and that's scary, because Lila's usually unflappable. We decide to check Gideon's place, hoping he's got answers. The trek's rough, fog clings to us, and every rustle makes me jump. Lila's clutching her knife, muttering about the wraith, marking its ground. I spot another spiral scratched into a tree, fresh sap oozing. It's not just creepy, it's deliberate, like a warning. My mind's racing, picturing those settlers who vanished, their bones never found. The woods feel alive, and not in a good way. Gideon's house is sturdy, all logs and steel locks, but it's too quiet. His truck's gone, but his tools are scattered, like he left in a hurry. The door's open, and inside, it's chaos. Papers everywhere, a map of the woods with red X's. Lila finds a note. It's in the fog. Don't trust your eyes. My skin crawls. Gideon's not just paranoid, he's running from something. The horror's sinking in. We're not alone out here. Back at my cabin, I'm rattled. Sable's hiding under the bed, and I'm checking locks like a maniac. My rifle's loaded, but it feels useless. I try to distract myself, fixing a leaky pipe, but my wrench is missing. I know I left it on the counter. It's small, but it's wrong, and it feeds the scary feeling that something's messing with me. I'm thinking about packing up, driving back to Philly, but I've got no money, no plan. Lila stays for tea, and we try to keep it normal, talking about her plant research, my old bookstore days. But we keep circling back to the wraith, the symbols, Gideon. She says the myth isn't just a ghost story. It's a force tied to the land that twists your mind before it takes you. I scoff, but I'm not so sure. The fog's heavier tonight, seeping under the door. Sable's hissing again, and my chest feels tight. I decide to rig more lights, thinking it'll push back the dark. I'm stringing wire when I hear it. A whisper, not words, just a hiss, like wind through bones. It's coming from the fog, and it's close. Lila hears it too. Her face goes pale. We freeze, listening, but it stops. The silence is worse, like the calm before a storm. I tell Lila to stay over. No way she's hiking back in this. By midnight, we're both on edge. I'm checking the windows when I see it. A shadow in the fog, tall and hunched, just beyond the light. It's still, but I feel its eyes. I blink, and it's gone. My hands are shaking, and Lila's gripping her knife. The disturbing truth is hitting hard. The Cane Wraith isn't just a story. It's here, and it's watching us. Something's about to break, and I'm not sure we're ready. I'm gripping my rifle, staring at the fog outside my cabin as Sable hisses from under the couch. The air in Cane's woods is thick, like it's pressing down on us. Lila's awake, her knife in hand, eyes darting to the windows. That shadow I saw, tall, hunched, feels like it's still out there, waiting. The horror's not just in my head anymore. It's real, and it's close. My heart's pounding so hard I can barely think straight, but I'm trying to hold it together for both of us. I check the motion light, but it's dead, wires chewed clean through. I step outside, rifle up, and the fog swallows everything. Trees, stars, sound. Then I see it. Footprints, too long, too narrow, circling the cabin. They're fresh, and they weren't there yesterday. My stomach lurches. This isn't a bear or a prank. It's something else, something scary. I'm thinking of the wraith, and it's starting to feel like more than a myth. Back inside, Lila's flipping through Gideon's map, the one with red X's. She says they mark old logging sites, places where settlers disappeared. One X is close, half a mile from here. Her voice is shaky, and she's talking fast, saying the wraith claims these spots. I want to tell her to chill, but then we hear it. A low hiss, like the one from last night, but louder, closer. It's coming from the fog, and it's saying my name, Nora. Sable bolts to the door, yowling, and I grab her before she claws it open. The windows are fogged up, but there's a shape outside, tall, hunched, pressing against the glass. It's not moving, just watching. Lila's whispering, "Don't look at it," but I can't help it. Its eyes are hollow, like black pits, and I feel them pulling at me. The horror's choking. It's like staring into a void that knows you. I slam the curtains shut, heart racing. We barricade the door with the bookshelf, but it feels pointless. The hissing's constant now, weaving through the fog like a chant. I try my phone. No signal, no surprise. The cabin's lights flicker, then dim, like something's draining them. I'm thinking of those horror movies where the monster cuts you off, traps you. This feels like that, but worse, because it's happening to me. Lila's carving symbols into the floor, saying they'll protect us. I'm not sure I buy it. We find Gideon's note again, the one about don't trust your eyes. Lila thinks it means the wraith messes with your head, makes you see things. I'm starting to believe her. Last night, I swore I saw my old bookstore's sign in the fog, glowing red. It's disturbing how it digs into your memories. We decide to check the closest X on the map, thinking it's where Gideon went. It's a bad idea, but staying here feels worse. The hissing stops, and the silence is heavier, like the air's waiting. Then, a thud, something hits the roof, hard. Dust rains down, and Sable's freaking out. I'm aiming the rifle at the ceiling, hands shaking, when we hear it. A voice, not mine or Lila's, whispering from the loft. It's garbled, but it's saying, "Come see." My blood's ice. The scary part isn't just the voice. It's that it sounds like it's already inside. Lila wants to run, but I'm frozen, picturing Gideon's empty house, those X's. We're arguing when the windows rattle, like something's testing them. I catch a glimpse outside, a handprint on the glass, bony, with fingers too long. It's gone when I look again, but my chest's tight. The horror's clear now. The Cain Wraith isn't just out there. It's here, and it's not leaving us alone. We're grabbing our gear, rifle, knife, Lila's notebook, when the door shakes, wood creaking like it's about to give. Sable's hissing, and I'm shouting at Lila to move. The fog's so thick it's seeping inside, curling around our feet. I don't know what's coming, but I know it's bad. The disturbing truth hits. We're not just hunted. We're marked, and the Wraith's ready to claim us. The door buckles, and I'm screaming at Lila to run. The Cain Wraith's outside, its hissing voice clawing at my skull. I grab Sable, stuff her in my jacket, and we dive for the back window. The fog's so thick it's like wading through soup, but we hit the ground running, my rifle banging against my hip. The horror's suffocating. This thing's not just chasing us, it's savoring our fear. Lila's got her knife, eyes wild, and we sprint into the woods, praying the fog hides us. Branches snap behind us, too close, and that hiss follows, chanting Nora like a curse. We're aiming for the logging site, the X on Gideon's map, hoping it's a clue to stop this thing. The ground's slick, and I slip, scraping my hands raw. Lila yanks me up, her face pale but fierce. The scary part isn't just the Wraith, it's the feeling it's driving us exactly where it wants us. We stumble into a clearing, old logging stumps rotting in the fog. There's a stone altar, covered in those spiral symbols, and Gideon's jacket, torn and bloody, lies beside it. My stomach drops. He's gone, just like the settlers. Lila's muttering about a ritual, something to banish the Wraith, but the hiss is louder now, circling us. I'm thinking of those horror flicks where the monster always wins, and I'm terrified this is one of those stories. Sable's squirming, hissing in my jacket, and I'm clutching the rifle, scanning the fog. A shape moves, tall, hunched, eyes like black pits. I fire, the shot echoing, but it's gone, like it was never there. Lila's carving symbols into the altar, hands shaking, saying we need to finish what Gideon started. The disturbing truth hits. This isn't just a hunt. It's a game, and we're the pieces. We hear it. A scream, Gideon's voice, coming from the trees. Lila wants to go, but I grab her, yelling it's a trick. The Wraith's messing with us, using his voice. But she's stubborn, bolting toward the sound. I chase her, Sable clawing my chest, and we crash through brambles, fog choking us. The scream stops, and the hiss is back, right behind us. My heart's screaming we're running into a trap. We reach a ravine, a rickety bridge swaying over it. Lila's ahead, but the bridge creaks, ropes fraying. I'm halfway across when I feel it. Cold, bony fingers brush my neck. I swing the rifle, hitting nothing, but the bridge shakes, planks snapping. Sable yowls, and I'm grabbing Lila, dragging her to the other side. The horror's clear. The Wraith's not just fast, it's everywhere. On the other side, we're gasping, the town's lights faint through the fog. I'm thinking we might make it when Lila screams. A clawed hand grabs her leg, pulling her back. I fire into the fog, and it lets go, hissing. She's bleeding, limping, but we're running again, the ravine behind us. The scary part? The hiss doesn't stop. It's following, patient, like it knows we're done. We're nearing Cain, houses in sight, when the ground trembles. The Wraith's close, its shadow swallowing the fog. I'm out of bullets, so I grab a flare from my pack, hands shaking. Lila's loading her knife with salt, some ritual trick she read about. Sable's hissing, ready to bolt. This is it. Life or death, and I'm not sure we're the ones who get to walk away. The wraith steps forward, its hollow eyes locked on us. I light the flare, ready to throw, and Lila's chanting, salt flying. For a second, I think we've got a shot. The fog swirls, the hiss falters, and the town's so close I can taste it. But the disturbing truth lingers. The wraith's been here before, and it doesn't lose. The wraith lunges, and I hurl the flare, its red glow searing the fog. It hits the thing's chest, and it screeches, a sound like shattering glass. Lila's chanting louder, tossing salt, and the wraith staggers, claws slashing the air. Sable's clawing free, bolting into the fog, and I'm screaming her name. The horror's crushing. This thing's not just a monster. It's a curse, and it's tearing us apart. I grab Lila, pulling her toward town, thinking we've won. We're running, Lila's leg bleeding bad, when the screeching stops. The fog's quiet, too quiet, and my gut twists. I'm thinking of Gideon's jacket, those settlers' bones. The wraith doesn't give up. We're at Kane's edge, streetlights flickering, when I hear it. Sable's yowl, sharp and pained. My heart rips. She's all I've got left. I turn back, ignoring Lila's shouts, and that's my mistake. I sprint into the fog, calling Sable, my voice hoarse. The wraith's waiting, tall, hunched, holding Sable's limp body. Its eyes bore into me, and I freeze, the rifle useless in my hands. Lila's screaming, but it's too late. The wraith drops Sable and grabs me, claws digging into my arms. I'm fighting, but it's like punching smoke. The scary part? It's not killing me. It's showing me something, visions of blood and bones, the settler's screams. Lila charges, knife flashing, and stabs the wraith's side. It howls, dropping me, and I scramble up, grabbing Sable's body. We're running again, but Lila's slowing, her leg giving out. I'm half carrying her, the town's lights so close, but the hiss is back, angrier. The disturbing truth sinks in, we didn't beat it. We just pissed it off, and it's not done with us. We reach a gas station, banging on the door. The clerk lets us in, eyes wide at our blood and panic. I'm babbling about the wraith, Sable's body in my arms, but he's calling it a bear attack. Lila's collapsing, blood pooling, and I'm begging for help. The sheriff comes, but they don't find the wraith, just Gideon's jacket and some symbols. The horror's not what they see, it's what they don't. Lila's in the hospital, barely alive. I'm back at the cabin, doors bolted, Sable's collar on the table. I can't leave, Philly's a dream now. The tragedy isn't just losing Sable or Gideon, it's knowing the wraith's still out there, waiting. I find a spiral scratched into my floor, fresh, like it was here. The fog's thick again, and I hear it. That hiss, my name woven in. I'm writing this down, hoping someone believes me. The sheriff says I'm traumatized, but I know the truth. The wraith's not gone, it's patient. I see it in the fog sometimes, just a shadow, watching. The scary part? It's not rushing. It knows I'm trapped, and it's savoring the wait. I keep Lila's knife close, but it's not enough. Every night, the hiss gets louder, closer. I found Gideon's map in my pack yesterday, not sure how it got there. It's marked with a new X, my cabin. The horror's won, and the cruelest part is, I thought I could fight it. The fog's rolling in now, and the windows are rattling. I'm out of flares, out of hope. If you're reading this, don't come to Kane. The wraith's real, and it's hungry. The door's creaking, and my name's in the fog. I'm sorry, Lila. I'm sorry, Sable. I should have run when I had the chance. The hiss is inside now, and I'm not sure I'll see morning. Run. Don't look back. I'm Theo Brandt, 41 years old, and I'm chopping wood outside my cabin near Ridgeway, Pennsylvania, where the air is sharp with pine and cold dust. I moved here 4 months ago, ditching Baltimore's chaos after my construction business tanked. This place, 2 rooms, no Wi-Fi, was supposed to be my fresh start, just me and my old hound, Rusty. The hills are quiet, but it's a heavy quiet, like the land's holding a grudge. Rusty's been edgy, sniffing the air like he smells trouble. Ridgeway's a sleepy town, about 12 miles away, and the locals keep to themselves. At the bar, they mumbled about the Ridgeway Reaper, a story from the coal mining days. They say it's a shadow that haunts the mines and hills, linked to workers who vanished in cave-ins. I laughed it off. Ghost stories don't scare me. But last week, I found a strange mark on my fence, a crescent scratched deep. It's weird, and it's sticking with me. I'm not completely alone out here. There's Mara Quinn, 33, a photographer who lives a mile east in a tiny A-frame. She's all sarcasm and camera lenses, snapping eerie shots of the hills. Then there's Silas Dodd, 50, a retired miner who's got a shack a mile west. He's gruff, always tinkering with old mining gear. We're not buddies, but we trade nods, share a beer sometimes. It's enough to keep me grounded. The cabin's rough, but mine, solar lights, a wood stove, a loft for my bed. I spend days fixing it up, hauling water from a spring, trying to rebuild my headspace. But the nights are long, and Rusty's been acting off, growling at the windows. I've noticed stuff too, my axe misplaced, a dead fox by the spring with its throat torn out. The horror's quiet, but it's there, creeping into my bones. Mara swung by yesterday, her camera slung around her neck. She showed me a photo she took near the old mine, a blurry shape in the mist, too tall to be human. She laughed, called it a lens flare, but her eyes were nervous. I told her to ease up on the late-night shoots, but I couldn't stop staring at the image. It was disturbing, like it was looking back at me through the screen. Silas is weirder. He dropped off some venison last week, muttering about keeping the Reaper happy. He saw the crescent on my fence and went pale, said it's a warning. I rolled my eyes. Guy's been in the hills too long. But he left me a charm, a coal shard carved with a rune. I tossed it in a drawer, but I keep thinking about it. The scary part? I'm not as sure as I was that he's crazy. I'm a hands-on guy, built houses for a living. I fix problems, not imagine them. But out here, things don't add up. Like when I found my toolbox open, tools arranged in a crescent shape. No way I did that. I set up a trail cam, but it caught nothing but mist. The horror's not in your face. It's slow, making you doubt yourself. I keep my hunting rifle loaded now, just in case. The Reaper myth won't leave me alone. Locals say it's no ghost. It's a debt collector, born from the mine's greed and blood. It doesn't just kill, it marks you, makes you unravel. I'm not superstitious, but I hung Silas's charm over the door just to shut him up in my head. The mist's thicker tonight, curling around the cabin like fingers. Rusty's growling now, low and steady, staring at the window. I grab the rifle, pulse kicking up, and check outside. The mist's so dense I can't see the trees, but I swear something moved. A shadow, quick and wrong. My chest's tight, and the cabin feels too small. I tell myself it's just the hills messing with me, but deep down, I know something's out there. Something bad. Rusty's growling wakes me, his nose pressed to the cabin door. It's 2 a.m., and the mist outside Ridgeway's hills is so thick it's like the world's gone. I grab my rifle, heart thumping, and check the windows. The solar light's flickering, casting weird shadows, and that crescent mark on my fence is fresh again, deeper, like it was clawed overnight. The horror's sinking in. This isn't random. Something's out there, and it's got my number. I check the trail cam, hoping for answers, but it's glitching. Hours of static, then one frame. A tall, shadowy figure, too thin, standing by the spring. My stomach twists. It's not a deer or a person. I delete it, muttering it's a glitch, but I'm lying to myself. I step outside, rifle ready, and the air's heavy with a burnt coal smell. The scary part? That crescent's on my door now, and I know I locked it. Mara shows up at dawn, her camera shaking in her hands. She says her A-frame was messed with, her darkroom trashed, photos torn up except one. That blurry figure, now sharper, with hollow eyes. She's rattled, and that's disturbing because Mara's usually a rock. I try to crack a joke about raccoons, but her glare shuts me up. She asks if I've seen Silas. I haven't, not since his creepy venison drop-off. We decide to hike to Silas's shack, figuring he might know something. The mist clings to us, and every snapped twig makes me jump. Mara's clutching her camera like a shield, snapping shots of the trees. I spot another crescent carved into a stump, fresh and raw. It's not just creepy, it's deliberate, like a trail. My mind's racing, thinking of those miners who vanished, their screams swallowed by the hills. Silas's shack is a mess, mining tools scattered, doors swinging open. His truck's here, but no Silas. Inside, it's worse. Maps of old mine tunnels pinned to the walls, marked with crescents. Mara finds a journal, pages scrawled with "it follows" and "pay the debt." My skin crawls. Silas wasn't just paranoid, he was terrified. The horror's real now, and it's not just stories anymore. Back at my place, I'm on edge. Rusty's pacing, and I'm checking locks like a nut. I try to stay busy, sharpening my axe, but it's missing. Then I find it stuck in the porch, blade gleaming. No way I left it there. The disturbing truth hits. Something's toying with me, and I'm not sure I can outrun it. I'm thinking about bolting to Baltimore, but I'm broke, and this cabin's all I've got. Mara stays for coffee, and we try to keep it light, talking about her photos, my old construction gigs. But we keep drifting to the Reaper, the marks, Silas. She says the myth isn't just a ghost, it's a curse tied to the mines that claims those who stay too long. I scoff, but the mist's thicker, seeping under the door. Rusty's growling again, and my hands are sweaty. I decide to rig a spotlight, thinking light will keep it at bay. I'm wiring it up when I hear it. A low hum, like a miner's pick tapping stone, coming from the mist. It's faint, but it's there, and it's calling my name, Theo. Mara hears it too. Her face goes white. We freeze, listening, but it stops. The silence is worse, like a trap waiting to spring. I tell Mara to crash here tonight. By midnight, we're jumpy. I'm checking the windows when I see it. A shadow in the mist, tall and thin, just beyond the light. It's still, but I feel its eyes, hollow and hungry. I blink, and it's gone. My pulse is racing, and Mara's gripping her knife. The scary truth is sinking in. The Ridgeway Reaper's not just out there. It's here, and it's coming for us. Rusty's barking rips me awake, his teeth bared at the cabin door. It's past midnight, and the mist outside Ridgeway's hills feels alive, pulsing against the windows. I grab my rifle, hands slick, while Mara's up, her knife gleaming. That shadow I saw, tall, thin, feels closer now, like it's breathing down my neck. The horror's thick, choking me, and I'm fighting to keep my head on straight. Rusty's hackles are up, and I know this isn't just nerves. I check the spotlight, but it's dead, wires shredded like something clawed them. I step outside, rifle raised, and the mist's so dense I can't see my own porch. Then I spot it. Crescent marks, dozens scratched into the dirt around the cabin. They're fresh, circling us like a noose. My gut twists. This is no animal. The scary part? It feels like the Reaper's marking us, claiming us. Back inside, Mara's flipping through Silas's journal, her face pale. It's full of rants about paying the debt and eyes in the dark. One page has my name, scrawled in shaky ink. I'm freaking out. How'd he know? Mara says the Reaper picks its targets, uses the mines to trap them. I want to call it crazy, but that hums back, louder, chanting Theo from the mist. The horror's real now, and it's personal. Rusty bolts to the window, snarling, and I see it, a shape in the mist, tall and thin, pressed against the glass. Its eyes are hollow, like coal pits, and I feel them pulling at me, like they're stealing my breath. Mara's yelling not to look, but I'm frozen. The glass creaks, and a crescent scratches itself into it, slow and deliberate. My heart's hammering. This thing's not just here, it's inside my head. We shove the couch against the door, but it's flimsy. The cabin's lights flicker, then die, plunging us into dark. My phone's useless, no signal, no power. The hum's constant, vibrating in my bones, and Rusty's losing it. I'm thinking of those old mining tales, how the Reaper dragged men into tunnels, their screams echoing. The disturbing truth hits. We're not just trapped, we're bait. Mara's carving runes into the floor, copying Silas's journal, saying they'll hold it off. I'm not sold, but I'm desperate. We find a map in the journal, marking a mine entrance nearby, one of Silas's crescents. Mara thinks Silas went there, maybe to face it. I say it's suicide, but staying here's no better. The scary thing? I'm starting to see things, my old Baltimore crew, dead in the mist, calling me. The hum stops, and the silence is worse, like the air's holding its breath. Then, a thud, something lands on the roof, heavy, scraping. Dust falls, and Rusty's barking so hard he's shaking. I'm aiming the rifle at the ceiling, sweating, when we hear it. A voice, raspy, whispering, "Pay," from the loft. My blood's ice. The horror's not just outside, it's in the cabin, and it's hungry. Mara wants to bolt for the mine, saying we can end this. I'm torn. Part of me wants to hunker down, but the door's rattling now, with splintering. I grab Rusty's collar, and we're packing gear, rifle, knife, Silas's journal. The mist's seeping inside, curling like fingers. The disturbing part? I swear I saw my own face in the window, grinning, but it wasn't me. We're about to run when the door shakes, hard, and a claw, long, black, slices through the wood. Rusty lunges, and I'm shouting for him to stop. The Reaper's here, its hollow eyes glowing through the crack. Mara's screaming, and I'm firing blind, the shot deafening. The claw pulls back, but the hum's louder, angrier. We're out of time, and the terror's just beginning. The door splinters, and I'm yelling at Mara to move. The Reaper's claw is through the wood, and Rusty's barking like mad. I fire my rifle again, the blast ringing in my ears, but the thing just hisses, low and mean. The horror's choking us. This isn't just a monster. It's a nightmare that knows our names. I grab Rusty, Mara's got her knife, and we dive for the back window, crashing into the mist-soaked hills of Ridgeway. We're running blind, praying we make it. The mist's thick, swallowing sound, and that hum's chasing us, chanting Theo like a taunt. We're aiming for the mine entrance from Silas's map, hoping it's a way to stop this thing. Branches claw my face, and I trip, Rusty yelping as I drag him up. Mara's panting, her knife ready, but the scary part's clear. The Reaper's not just following, it's herding us, like lambs to slaughter. We stumble into a clearing, the mine's black mouth gaping ahead. Silas's gear is scattered, pickaxe, lantern, blood-streaked journal. My stomach drops. He's gone, just like the miners. Mara's muttering about a ritual, something to trap the Reaper in the mine. The hum's louder, vibrating the ground, and I see it. A shadow, tall and thin, in the mist. I fire, but it's gone, like smoke. The horror's real. We're not hunting it. It's hunting us. Inside the mine, it's damp, the air heavy with cold dust. Rusty's whining, and my flashlight's flickering. The walls are scratched with crescents, some old, some fresh. Mara's carving runes, saying we need to lure it deeper. I'm thinking of those horror movies where the cave's a trap, and my gut's screaming we're screwed. A scream echoes, Silas's voice, raw, begging. Mara bolts toward it, and I'm cursing, chasing her. The tunnel narrows, and the hum's deafening, shaking dirt loose. Rusty's pulling back, but I drag him, heart pounding. We find Silas, or what's left, slumped, eyes gone, crescents carved into his chest. Mara gags, and I'm fighting not to lose it. The disturbing truth hits. The Reaper doesn't just kill, it breaks you, piece by piece. Something moves behind us, and I spin, firing into the dark. The hiss answers, too close. We're running deeper, tunnels twisting like a maze. Mara's chanting, scattering salt from Silas's pack, saying it'll weaken it. I'm clutching Rusty, my flashlight dying. The ground shakes, and claws scrape the walls, echoing. I see it, hollow eyes glowing, closing in. I throw the lantern, oil sparking, and it screeches, giving us a second. The scary part? We're trapped, and the mine's its home. We hit a dead end, a collapsed shaft. Mara's carving a final rune, hands bloody, screaming it's our last shot. I'm swinging the pickaxe, trying to clear a way out, but the Reaper's here, its shadow swallowing the light. Rusty lunges, teeth snapping, and I'm shouting for him to stop. It swipes, and he yelps, thrown against the wall. My heart's breaking, but Mara's yelling to keep going. We're fighting for our lives, and it's not enough. Mara finishes the rune, and the hum falters, the Reaper staggering. We bolt, dragging Rusty, his side bleeding. The tunnel's collapsing, rocks falling, and we're dodging debris. The town's lights faint beyond the entrance. I'm thinking we might make it, but the hiss is back, angrier, right behind us. The horror's clear. We're not outrunning this thing, not without a cost. We burst out, gasping, Ridgeway's light so close. The Reaper's shadow looms, claws slashing. I swing the pickaxe, hitting something solid, and it screeches, backing off. Mara's limping, Rusty's barely moving, but we're running, the mine crumbling behind us. The disturbing truth lingers. We're alive, but the Reaper's not done. It's waiting, and we're marked. The Reaper's screech fades, and we're stumbling toward Ridgeway, Rusty limp in my arms. Mara's bleeding, her leg torn, but she's pushing on, chanting under her breath. The town's lights are bright, but the horror's not gone. It's like a weight on my chest. I'm thinking of Silas, carved up, and those miners, lost forever. The Reaper's real, and it's cruel, stripping everything we love. We reach a diner, banging on the door, and collapse inside. The cook calls the sheriff, but I'm babbling about the Reaper, and they're staring like I'm nuts. Mara's fading, medics rushing her to the hospital. I'm cradling Rusty, his breathing shallow, and the vet says he's too far gone. I'm sobbing, begging him to hold on, but he's gone, eyes dull. The scary part? That's not the worst loss. I made a mistake, and it's coming. I'm back at the cabin, doors locked, Silas's journal open. The sheriff found the mine collapsed, Silas's body inside, but no Reaper. They call it a cave-in, say we're lucky. I'm not, because I went back. That's my mistake. I thought we trapped it, but the crescent's on my door again, fresh, and the hum's back, whispering Theo. The disturbing truth hits. I didn't trap the Reaper. I brought it with me. Mara's in the hospital, barely talking, her eyes haunted. I visit, but she flinches when I mention the mine. The town's quiet, but the mist's heavier, curling around my cabin. I find Mara's knife in my truck, not sure how it got there, carved with a crescent. The horror's not just out there. It's in me, in the things I see, my old crew, dead, in the mist, grinning. I'm writing this down, hoping someone finds it. The sheriff thinks I'm grieving, but I know better. The Reaper's patient, waiting for me to break. I see it at night, a shadow in the mist, hollow eyes watching. The tragedy isn't just Rusty or Silas, it's knowing I'm next, and I can't stop it. The hum's louder, shaking the walls, and my name's in it. I try to fight, carving runes, keeping the rifle loaded. But the mist's inside now, seeping through cracks. I found Silas's charm on my bed, not in the drawer where I left it. The scary part? I'm starting to hear the Reaper's voice in my head, telling me to pay. I'm not sure what it wants, but it's close, and I'm running out of time. Every night, the hum grows, and the crescents multiply. On the windows, the floor. I see Mara's face in the mist sometimes, but it's not her. It's the Reaper, wearing her like a mask. The horror's won, and the cruelest part is, I thought we could fight it. I should have left Ridgeway when I had the chance, but I stayed, and now it's too late. The cabin's shaking now, the door rattling like it's about to give. I'm out of bullets, out of runes. The Reaper's here, its shadow filling the room, eyes burning. I'm sorry, Rusty. I'm sorry, Mara. If you're reading this, don't come to Ridgeway. The Reaper's real, and it's hungry. The hum's deafening, and my name's all I hear. The door's breaking, and I'm done. I'm writing this as the mist pours in, the Reaper's claws scraping. I see it now, tall, thin, hollow eyes locked on me. It's not just taking me, it's claiming me, like it did the miners. The tragedy's complete, and I'm the last piece. Run. Don't look back. The Reaper's here, and it's calling your name next.